I think someone joined the channel. What's up, man? Can you hear me okay? Or are you looking to sneak up on me?
Both.
Sorry, let me turn you up a little bit. Turn the music down a little bit maybe as well. Can you try speaking again, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I said, can it be both?
It could be both. It could very much be both. How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. It is Friday afternoon after all. So wanted to thank you for agreeing to be on here and chat with me a little bit, man. I know a little bit about you, but I wanted to maybe start with some of the basics that I like to get out of the way first, if you don't mind. So when did you make your avatar? Like, how long have you been in Entropia?
So that's a mixed question. I actually joined when I guess it was, I wouldn't say the release day, but it was the very first couple of days when they were doing the beta, way back when. And I joined in and walked around, which would have been the space, at least from in my memory, it's been a really long time. That was some 20 some odd years ago. It would have been around Port Atlantis, and there was nothing there. And all I could remember was I got to put money in for this, and it was a beta at the time, so there really wasn't any communication. There were chat channels, there was nothing. I didn't even see anybody for that matter. And so I dumped it and went about my day. I think about that time was when I was playing EverQuest 2, or sorry, regular EverQuest, pretty hardcore. I picked it up again in 2005, and similar story, different avatar. And I remember doing crafting terminal, and I thought, man, this is dumb, and bailed on it. Lost the avatar, don't have it anymore. And I think it was a few years later, it would be 2013. The short answer of that is when I created this one, but it was the same thing. I expected it to be, I'm not gonna play this. I'm just gonna dip in, see how things were. Was it still as it was before then? My economic situations were different, so I needed to put a little bit of money in it. I could do that. And so that's why I picked the particular avatar name that I did, because I was not intending to continue playing. It was was actually my the priest character's name that I had in uh, EverQuest 2 and also in WoW.
Okay.
And so I went with it just as a joke and expanded it out like some kind of Asian hooker, and made the mistake of course, not, I chose a male avatar. Again, shows you the seriousness that I had of this. I really wasn't committed to it, and chose a male avatar. So maybe I'm before my time. It's 2023 now, so it's perfectly legitimate to have an Asian hooker that's male. But that's really the long story of it.
Oh, it's cool. And I'd always kind of wondered, like the story behind the name. And I think it's kind of funny how you kind of admitted to it being like you didn't have the foresight to know that you were going to play that long. And I think I was similar with how I named my avatar as well. Like, I didn't know. I was just trying out the game, But I mean, it sounded like you had a few more avatars that you had made prior to this. So you just kind of picked it up and then set it down quite a bit over the years, I guess.
Yeah, there was two attempts. I mean, one when I remember getting the original beta email. I remember the buzz when it was becoming, when they were actually thinking about building it. I could have swear somewhere around 1999, 2000 when there was that buzz, and at least the buzz in the circles in which I got it, got the email, and I'm just graduating high school at that time, and then joining it and thinking, and I'm playing other games, and so you're comparing it to that, and you're like, this has got no chance. And then picking it up in 2005, and it just, I mean, one thing I can remember is the auction house window is still the same, so it hadn't changed, but everything else seemed to be different from what I can remember. And when I picked it up this final time, let's not include all the various quits that I've had since then, but when I picked it up this time with this character, it was just that there were other people around, and there were people to talk to, and being able to understand somewhat of what was going on versus and the overall concept versus just here's a game, you figure it out, which is
I think like I remember hearing about before missions got implemented even, and I played EQ2 for a while, just like a short duration. I never really got heavy into it, but I can only I can compare like the early graphics, just like the images that I've seen of Entropia, to just that game, and there's, like you said, there's no comparison. So what kind of keeps you involved with Entropia? Do you treat it more like a money making venture, or do you just play it for the fun now?
And I think most people that know me knows that I stick around here because of fun. I would say this game keeps me far moodier than I would like it to. I came back this last time because I have moved to a place in which winters are about 7.5, 8 months long now, and so I needed a little something to keep my mind occupied. And I also have probably a very unhealthy addiction to spreadsheets and math and theory crafting, and while there isn't so much the theory crafting in EverQuest, it's very linear in that regard. And I certainly don't have a love for like Path of Exile and that level of theory crafting, unless that was kind of something I was gonna sit and do 10, 12 hours a day, and I'm far too old for that now. Maybe 20 years ago I would have, but not now. But the challenge of it, which is a never-ending struggle. This game is a never-ending struggle. It's a constant challenge. You're always trying to squeeze that last 0.1% and trying to figure out how to make that work. And I would say that that's probably what keeps me in it for the most part.
Just trying to min-max a little bit, and like all the like combinations that you can come up with that work.
Well, I mean, like I said, this game is linear in that regard. There aren't too many combinations that you're going to come up with. It isn't like it was with 1.0, where you had all the various combinations to get you again, still linear. You had the a sweet spot DPP to get to, and once you got that, it was glory. And then of course when I got there, it was no joke, a week later they hosed the entire system.
That's gotta suck, man.
It does. It very much does, and I quit not too long after. That was quit number one.
Yeah.
But I know that I wasn't the only one. And that was even before I missed the entire gap of when they had 2.0 and the lack of looter system. I'm told that was absolutely awful.
Yeah. I played back in 1.0 briefly, just long enough to remember the no looters and the Nova fragments. And I mean, I was a complete noob then. I am still pretty noob now, but as far as like total skills go compared to some. But I don't know, do you like it more now? Like, do you find it's more beneficial to the average player now in 2.0, or would you, if you had the option, would you go back to 1.0?
That's a hard one. I think as an overall, it probably is a little better now than it was then. problem that I have is that the looter system and even the efficiency level system on its face represents a pyramid system. If you take it for what it is,
Yeah.
and that's a problem, and one could actually argue is actually illegal. But I'm not going to get into that side of it. It's just you can get we'll call them veteran rewards, which is really kind of what the looter system is, to just keep you grinding. Whereas in 1.0 you needed a lot of investment to get to that particular DPP range, which even then really was only regulated to certain weapons. So like IMK2 was the big one. And then when they introduced the rings, it became those few ring combinations that got you into that DPP range.
Right.
So the long and short of that is I do think for the overall new player, mid player, as a whole, the current version, however I feel about the looter system, the looter skills and all that, is fairer than it was in 1.0 for those reasons.
Yeah, no, I think I agree as well. Yeah, I can kind of see your point where before it was like strictly rewarding capital. Now it seems to be more of like your tenure and like how much you can actually put into your skills, like with the implementation of looter levels and everything else, to go along with it. But yeah, that's interesting insight. Thanks, man. So one other thing that I like to ask, and I've asked the other people on here before, if Mindark was listening, what's one thing that you would tell them? Or like a suggestion even.
I have two. Can I
Okay.
can I do two?
I mean, you make the rules, man. You're the guest, so.
So because I gotta think about the second one just a little bit more, but the first one is you're gonna have to do something about the various wives and alts and other things that are prevalent within the system. Whether it be checks or something, you're gonna have, and if you can't do anything legally about that kind of thing, which is an issue, it's actually one of my biggest pain points right now. Then you're gonna have to balance the entire game around the fact that those exist.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the macro hunters and the automations and all of those. There's pros and cons of all of that,
Yeah.
and that's really not for this.
Yeah.
It's that there are people who have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 accounts that are exploiting the system, and there's nothing to be done about it, and probably Mindark can't realistically do that because those accounts have certain IDs, whether it be wives, sisters, alts, bastard kids, whomever it be. How do you? They all represent like a bank account underneath it, and then there's just nothing that you can really do about that. So if there's nothing that you can do about that, and they're not breaking any rules, then you're gonna have to balance the entire game around that, instead of just letting it be that top heavy.
Right. Yeah.
The second part I have is more logistically around Mindark, the company itself. Be consistent. The it there's you can see that in my attitude that I have on PCF and in the game as a whole. And I even told Ludwig this not too long ago, earlier this week. I give attitude specifically for a particular reason. I have a pretty high bar when it comes to customer service. While it wasn't customer service that I did, I very much did support role my entire life as a profession.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to, and it's not much effort. Keep your players updated. When's the last time we had anything about Unreal 5? It gives us all the impression that either nothing is being done about it or it is not, it's not being taken seriously, right? It's the seriousness level of compets, right? We know how
Yeah.
that went.
Yeah.
They have a lot of work to do in that regard to keep the players engaged and, hype it up a bit. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
The potential of it, whenever it may be. But I say that whenever it may be because I have no idea. They don't tell us about it. The last excuse we saw in the Discord server was because the Discord server wasn't a primary official channel, they weren't going to talk about it in it. Well, that makes no sense, right?
Right.
Support tickets, hire somebody. Some take, an hour or two. Happens to be when you want a withdrawal removed,
Yeah.
or you want your deposit limit increased. But when there's something that is meaningful to the player or to the individual, and you don't hear anything back from them, like for weeks or months or years, if you get and you do all of this effort to upgrade to Unreal 5, and you don't change these fundamental pieces and flaws within your company, you will fail. They're on a path to fail. It doesn't matter what they do to the game, they have to change those underlining core pieces of the company, the support. And maybe when there's a lot of people, they'll have a lot of money in theory to then hire some folks. But when we've pushed them on that on PCF, the excuse that we've gotten was that their ticket system is outdated and they got lost, or whatever it is. But we've heard that multiple times, and nothing's been fixed, and they just tell us one thing and hope it dies down, and nothing fundamental changes. They send some new community manager out, and it's good for a little bit, and then just dies away.
Yeah. I feel like.
And
Sorry. Go ahead.
and those and I'll wrap it up. Those things, they have to change.
Yeah. No. I agree, man. I think like reflecting myself on some of the support cases that I've made, where I'm not talking like superfluous cases. I'm talking like where I did my thorough, due diligence and made an impactful, recommendation or, what have you, sparing the specifics. But it's just so disheartening just to get a cut and paste answer, and now they've stopped with the signatures. You don't even know who the hell has, handled your case. You can't get anything else besides like a live FAQ with live support. They have no power. So there goes your instant accessibility to them, right? So it's kind of piss poor, like you said. So I really agree with some of the points that you brought out. And despite the hype or the potential upgrades coming, if they can't fix the core issues with the company, then I do agree that they need to get that right.
Yeah, all of us as players are used to this, and just because we're used to it doesn't mean that we all accept it. I sure don't.
Yeah.
But if you're doing this entire exercise with Unreal 5 and spending all of this money, what was it, $1 million or something like that, and all of the development effort to redo your entire platform around that, and then you attract, I don't know, let's say 20,000 people, 20,000 players. We'll just, that we'll say conservative. And they all put in support tickets and act like the company is not there. Most people who play games or get into investments where there's nobody at the other end are going to think it's a scam. That is not the first impression that you want to have.
Yeah.
And so it's very little effort. I mean, to be honest, you could probably hire me or someone else. I'm not saying for me, but literally one person just dedicated for all of this, and you could have a heck of a lot better experience than you've got now. And I know that was the point of live support. Live support was put in specifically so that you could, a lot of the burden of support could be handled, the quick things, I'm stuck and so forth. But it doesn't really sound like those people are actually empowered to handle, hey, I'm stuck in space or
Oh yeah.
stuck in a washing machine, come get me out. You know, they're not empowered to do anything.
Yeah.
And except to relay to somebody else that probably at that time is not even available, not even at the company, the lights are off. And so it's all to say that it has to change, because if it doesn't, it's going to fail.
Yeah. Dude, I remember reaching out to a live support person in the game to help to get me away from like a shared loot big bulk, because I was running stuff out. I didn't have armor, I didn't have a weapon. It was just me, and I was expecting them to do like a teleport command or something. The dude just shows up and's like, hey, let's rush out to my quad wing so I can fly you away. I'm like, I could have PM'd my friend, like, why would I need to engage, and like I said, they're just a walking FAQ. That's all they are. They'll read you the FAQ. That's all live support is an interactive FAQ. And it's so piss poor, man. But yeah, I feel like we could sit here and rant on that for for a couple hours. But
Well, I'll give you another, and it's to throw some bombs
sure.
here. But there have been multiple times in which I've reached out to live support because I had particular individuals, not to name names, who couldn't get their macros together and were constantly up my butt and killing things and killing my mobs, including this week happened on Rocktorpia.
Oh.
And they don't do anything. They don't come there to watch. What I get is, well, if you record it and send it to us, then we'll take a look at it. I shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
No, in no other game do I need to do that.
Yeah. Like, just TP to me, go invisible, and inspect me. Yeah.
In no other game should I have to go through those big efforts. And even if I did, chances are you're not going to do anything about it. And that's the level of distrust there. But even if I did, all you have to do is just TP to me, which I know you can do. I know that Planet developers can do that. Surely you could. And just look at the individual that is repeatedly at my rear end, whether purposefully or just unattentively, kill stealing my mobs. It's just...
It's fucked. Yeah. I mean, like, I was told when I got the instructions for hardware macroing that you needed to monitor your gameplay. That was a big part that I feel like a lot of people are just like, optional, that hardware macro today. So without getting too far into that, if you hardware macro and you're listening, monitor your gameplay and don't be an asshole. And thanks for the raid, Lord I really appreciate it, man. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good stream. But yeah, like, where's the efficacy and where's the accountability when it comes to support? Like, I can submit a support case and I don't know whether you've just, deleted it, put it in the trash bin, or if it actually got, escalated. There's nothing. There's no greater insight. There's no like, hey, this was handed off to tier 2 and they'll be working with you. Please talk to this guy. There's none of that. So
well, and that should be in the ticket itself. You should have some level of transparency that this was escalated from tier 1 to tier 2, and
yeah,
and so forth. I mean, I would have a little bit of empathy into the situation, given that in my enterprise environment, there were groups that would get so many tickets that the way it was set up, they would only be able, the way it was set up and the way the KPMs were, the metrics that they had to abide by, they had to get to they always got to the most recent ones. And so if they didn't get to your ticket within like a couple of hours, it was already well outside the view of their queue. It was a problem that I eventually exposed and got them to fix within the company. But it took them 9 months to agree to that was the issue and actually fix it. My point in that is that there could be something within their ticket system, because I think it's internal,
yeah,
that that is an issue, but just put in some effort and fix it, right?
Yeah.
Put in some money, anything. Maybe all the money that's currently being uh, captured by the auction house transports that was supposed to go to space missions that never came. Go use that for that. I just long without beating the dead horse, because we certainly are beating the horse.
We're only 40 minutes
Is
in, man. We've got the whole night, so you're good.
yeah. Well, sure. It is just you've got some work to do before you decide to release this Unreal 5.
Yeah.
And they better do it soon. And I would say that if it doesn't change, the player base really needs to be vocal on that, because the future of this platform is really going to depend on this one issue. You're not going to be able to attract the common modern player that would even touch an RCE like this unless there is legitimate support on the back end.
Yeah.
Like I submitted a ticket to Path of Exile over collector's pack that they're supposed to send me, right? It's the biggest core pack thing.
Okay.
I got a response within 5 minutes. I'm not expecting 5 minutes from Mindark, but I'm also not I also won't accept 3 to 7 days.
Yeah, or just I've had some where, like you said before, they just fell off because of the time expiry, right? And you got an auto response because it had been so long, like it had been months, So yeah, we don't have to stay on this topic much longer, man. But I do agree with a lot of the points that you made, if not all of them, honestly, man. So it's nice to hear there's someone else out there that has a good understanding of the standard that they need to hit, And I like your call to action for the people watching and listening in. If you're a part of this community and the player base, then speak up for what you want to see, or it won't happen. But yeah, cool, man. So, you don't have to answer specifics. What's up, Graf? How you doing, man? But you don't have to answer specifics, but, like, are you overall positive or negative with your investment in Entropia?
Sentiment or dollar-wise?
Well, there's a few ways you could take this. If you want to calculate in skills, if you want to do, like, if I sold my avatar in theory, because we know that happens, right? But I mean, it's just like if dollar or ped value is what I was talking about.
Okay, there's 2 different paths we go down. We go down sentiment, but I think people understand what my sentiment is these days. Net worth wise, I am not including skills. My gear puts me ahead.
Nice.
There was a time when I had the BC 120 and all that. I had $150,000 invested in this game, and part of it, if you're aware of the fact that I've quit 4 times or 4 different times in the last 10 years, it's been around that I get bothered by the how much that you have to invest, or because of the volatility of the game, how much of a bankroll that you need to kill mobs that are 60 cents a piece. That the entire game, and as I've learned, certainly so in my spreadsheet show it, is that the game has gotten more and more volatile over the years, and I don't know whether that is a Mindark thing, turning switches and dials, or if that is just an overall fact that the overall looter of everybody has gotten higher, as well as the efficiency use of everybody's weapons is also gotten higher.
Yeah.
So you need more and more bankroll, and so that ends up being an issue. And then this last time, even though I was and I also got screwed by an alt, um, and a vendor, my Mayhem vendor pool. Again, also not naming names, but because of that, and then the money was invested, I just said the hell with it and quit. And then I came back because we moved to a place that, winters are very long up here, and so this gave me an opportunity to start fresh, and I was ahead, and so I've used that money to and a little bit extra to get where I'm at now. I still have those feelings of, man, I sure would like to sell out and withdraw because of X, Y, and Z. But I think that I'll probably just continue the way it is. I think I've kind of at least leveled off, which it hadn't been the case in the last. Well, if you've read my hunting log, you can see that things have not been the best. But
Right.
With my skills, my avatar has, I think, roughly 310,000 pet by my last calculation, because I do it weekly. Because I'm looking, I have a particular hypothesis that I'm looking through. So taking my skill values every week, and I think the last time I looked, it was about 310,000 pet of skill value. I almost have 1,000,000 of skills. So what that means in the actual market, I have no idea. But you're not going to get that if you were to sell it. But
yeah,
that's at least what the avatar is worth skill wise.
I got you, man. That's awesome, and I'm glad to hear that you're overall positive. It's always nice to hear. Got a question from Graph in chat. Do you have any land areas on Arcadia?
No, I sold those. That was, I think, quit number 2.
Okay, so going back a few quits, those. Yeah.
Well, yes. Again, I had too much invested, and there were some things that I was going on in real life, so I needed to get the money out on it, and I sold them. So I think Starkiller owns Inver Valley. I think David still owns, or somebody else owns Quorum Coast, and then Divinity and Crew owns Akis Islands, which were the 3 that I had. I don't own any land areas.
So you currently know land areas. Okay, got it.
No, and I don't plan to anytime soon. It goes back to having too much invested. Unless I somehow find the magic RNG to get, to be able to fart out twin weapons. I don't think I'm gonna get any land areas anytime soon.
You're in the wrong sock for that, man. So.
Yeah. That's what I've noticed.
I was joking around about that a few VODs ago, but yeah, it's just funny. It's like there's like a heat map, but it always follows the same people. It seems like so. But yeah, cool.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's the same people. It's that the highest concentration of the people with the biggest gear fall within 2 societies, and actually there's another as well, which I think is I don't know why. And so those 3 are all doing the mobs that in Mindark's terrible loot balancing, they put it in. We'll focus on the off-planet weapons.
Okay.
They put them in the same mobs with a little variation, but they're in the same ones. And then you couple it with that it's all exploitable by waves. So you have it follow in ancient Greece, and then what was the other one? Cyrene. Well, naturally, the next ones that need to drop are Rocktropia and maybe Toulon. Toulon's kind of been getting the shaft of the stick, or getting shafted here lately. It's just that's what happens. It's happened constantly, and so that's where people go, and the people who can actually shoot those mobs are in those 3 socks, and that's what ends up happening. I would have personally preferred that they had done the token system. That way, instead of it being concentrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't around. That was what quit number Yeah, it was quit number 2.
Okay.
So, I missed the whole then. I actually came back at the end of it, that December, and I wish they would have done that, because then instead of being concentrated, it would be spread out. Furthermore, I wish they wouldn't have done weapons. I wish they would have done more auxiliary and cosmetic things, um,
Yeah.
because that's what's sorely lacking in the game. Get rid of the exploitable waves and loot boxes, and maybe you do a little something there, but spread it out into the token system, and that way, no matter what you do, that you're getting some piece of it, and then it then concentrates to still the really the same people probably, but it's done in a more coordinated fashion, instead of everybody feeling like that, they just don't have a chance.
Yeah.
And so instead of not having a chance, they just don't play.
Right.
My friends list tends to be half a page, where usually it's 3 pages.
Yeah.
Um, and when I talk to them, it's well, I have no chance of looting X, Y, and Z item, and I feel the same way. Um, Whether I can do those mobs or not is not relevant. It's just, I don't know. Just
I think some people do like focus on the negatives too, and I mean that's human nature in general, just the negativity bias of everything. But I mean, like it's easy to give up, especially when it always is the usual suspects, right? Or like your DPS just can't compete, or you don't have insight into the wave mechanic like some of these people do. Um, I did have an interesting conversation though
well, even
previously. Sorry, go ahead.
so I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I'll point on that. But even if you did have insight to the wave system, you don't want to be pinned to the game 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You want to be able to go and have dinner with your wife, or you have to work, or and I think that's the piece that rubs me wrong. Is that
Yeah.
because you have to wait for the wave, and you don't want to miss it, and it might happen, while you're gone, versus it being a pure RNG, that if I go to this mob, and even if it has to be a particular above a certain level, that that you have a chance, and that's the problem. Or, as it was with then, if you what was it, you shot over at a level 50 mob, you got a chance at a platinum token. You know,
Yeah.
that way, at your leisure or your general time, you can then go and hunt those mobs, and then maybe by the end of twin, you can actually be able to pull something, whether it's really small, or you bought some and it's really large. um, versus how it is now, where you need to have alerts and macros, and I think people have written software that if certain things happen, then big alerts and notifications go out. And when a twin weapon drops, then it tells you, that you need to go to any number of, that the wave started. That's that's just not good design.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's I've heard I've heard a lot of theories and stuff, when it comes to how to best approach looting items and seasonal rings and everything, and it's all tied to waves. But going back to what I was going to mention earlier, is I had a conversation, I believe it last Q&A that I had, um, where I brought up the point, well, maybe the waves is how they get around legally Entropia not being a gambling game, because it is predictable if you put in the time and effort to track it. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's just an easy way out for them to not really, they're kind of lazy with it, and that's why it's a thing?
I think it's both. I think it's an engine limitation, and I think it's them being lazy, or by engine limitation and being lazy, and as well as that it's a way for them to get around it being gambling. So, um, it, I I think someone made a comment that I think I saw it on PCF, that David Simmons made a comment that loot boxes were skill based, and there's no rational person that actually thinks that is logical. However,
Was that
assuming
was
he
that
said,
the interview that they had on YouTube with that guy?
I think so.
Oh man, I
So
remember that.
so let's assume he said it, just because I don't know, but
Okay.
let's assume he said it. The only way that that makes logical sense is that you need to have personal skill to know when these items drop, and or when there's a large batch of amps that drop or something meaningful versus just randomly opening 1,000 boxes or something like that. That's the only way I can think of. However, if that was what they needed to do to get around gambling, then why did they not allow people in Sweden to buy loot boxes?
Right. Oh, I'm so
So
happy
there's a
you said it.
there's a hole there. The second part is that uh, the the whole waves, and yes, I could maybe buy into that this is a way for them to skirt it, but as a programmer by trade, this screams them just doing loot distributions through ETL jobs in the background, so database jobs, which is why there for some time, some years ago, every 30 minutes or an hour, there would be this gigantic pause, lag in the game, and the waves would start. It became very predictable. And so, and then they eventually fixed it. But my point is that I could buy into that this is a way for them to get around it, but I think this very much is that this is the only way that they can do what they're doing within this engine without either a massive upheaval or a complete rework of everything that they've done.
So do you think it would be an accurate assumption to say Loot 3.0 is on the way with Unreal?
Uh, I, 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 I don't know because I haven't really seen enough with Unreal and what they've done, and they put it on Instagram that.
That's been about it, just Instagram post, but yeah.
Well, and that's the problem is I don't touch Instagram, so
Yeah.
there's usually some leaks that come up on the Discord, but even if there aren't many, right? They just seem to be like the starter pieces. There's no big like gameplay trailers or any of that stuff. When I think what we've been a year in now,
Yeah.
should be seeing a lot more substantial stuff by now. But I won't get back on that subject.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have to do a Loot 3.0. I'm hoping that is limited to that they're just going to get rid of waves and it is more RNG, and that certain mobs have certain loot pools, certain bosses and elites, and they're going to maybe more of that like normal mobs and rares and elites and that kind of mechanic versus this more maturity based grind fest, which I
Yeah.
think most of the players have actually been calling for, right? More interactive play. Don't stand in circles and fires. I don't really think they're going to do that. I think it's still going to be this grindy thing because this is how they make money. And so as long as that mechanic is there where they only make money through decay and turnover, unless they're going to have a workforce that takes more of the mindset of like Path of Exile, which does things through cosmetics and stuff. And core packs and that kind of thing, I think we're just going to be like it is now with a lot more bells and whistles and effects. But I think that at some point they're going to change the looter system again. This is my own, I have nothing to go by. Once everybody has gotten to a certain looter level, they'll revamp the system again.
Yeah. They're going to
when it
have
becomes
to
a problem.
keep it, to keep it balanced to a degree. They're going to have to, I think, because right now there's just so much, like, there's so many more weapons that have high efficiency and like big dick DPS and DPP. They're going to have to rework it, I think.
Well, they're doing that to themselves, right? They're the ones that are putting out these weapons to keep people interested, to keep the grind going, because that's how they get paid. they're the ones that are creating that environment that everybody's getting higher efficiency weapons, and they should. And I'm hoping that the next installment they do is going to be centered around limited weapons with more effects that are actually probably better than unlimited, so that you have a reason to use unlimited weapons. Because right now you don't, unless you're too poor to do any kind of unlimited weapon. There's no reason to use an arm matrix. And I do know that all the planet partners, but it's been this way for a couple of years, all the planet partners can't make new weapons. They've been told that they can't do that. And I don't feel like that there's anything in the pipe to fix that. They've just been told that they can't make weapons now. Arcadia has their Pyrons, and everybody has their old stuff, but they can't refresh it. So there's going to be something that's going to be centered around limited weapons at some point. I don't know that that's going to be anytime soon, or that it's going to be with Unreal. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Looks like Rar says everything the planet partners do that is not cosmetic needs to be dragged through a balancing team at Mindark, and most things get turned down, sadly. I believe you're correct, Rar. And it's sad.
That is true.
Yeah.
You can thank Never Die for that. He's the reason why those checks and balances are there. However, not everything has been turned down. Just look how Cyrene has done what they've done. They've actually progressed no problem. Even the Monria and Toulon team have made strides, but they can't get too overly fancy. I mean, even Next Island and Ancient Greece. But if you notice, all of them use the same templates, right? Every planet partner got to create their own plates, and now they've gotten to create their own armor versions. None of them really get to do things on their own, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I think there was that MMOWC ring that came out that was Never Dies, which it's kind of funny to see that ring because it's got some values over the maximum item buff that you can have, so it just did whatever you wanted. So
well, if you remember, the life cloak that started all the buffs got snuck in by mistake.
I didn't know that.
Yes. That came from Calypso official. He said that in local chat. He got put in by mistake, and then they just ran with it because it became very popular. The latter part is my own assessment, that they just ran with it because it got popular, and then they had to put limitations on it because there were no maxes on these buffs for a while, and they put those in.
You cut out there towards the end. What was that?
I said there weren't limitations on those buffs for a while, and then they had to put those in.
Gotcha.
As well.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I knew that for example, the stolen armor set wasn't supposed to be a thing on Cyrene, and that got implemented by mistake. But I didn't know about the HP cloak or the lifesteal cloak being a result of that as well.
Yeah, not the hit point cloak came later. It was the 1% lifesteal cloak. And when Never Die brought in the vampire pet, he was lobbying to get lifesteal on it. He was telling everybody that he wanted to get lifesteal on it, and so that drove everybody to farm it, despite that it cost a ridiculous amount of money to farm that stupid pet. And it was based on the idea that there was going to be lifesteal as a benefit, and that never transpired, which you notice that nobody really goes and farms that. Plus, I think it's 5% tax now, but
yeah,
or it always was. The whole planet is pretty much.
Yeah, I don't really touch Rocktropia, to be honest, and I think the only reason that I would go there right now would be to do the twin grind to try to get a twin drop, or maybe the sniping Unity. That's a pretty sexy gun. So just for PvP. But I digress.
That weapon's been dropping on a mob that is level 105.
Easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's cool. So you said you're nearing 1,000,000 skill points in total. Is that correct? That's crazy.
Yeah, 858,000.
That's awesome, man. So what's your biggest professional level? Can you share that?
It is BLP 235, and that's largely because of me having the BC 120.
Nice. So what are you grinding with now, if not the BC 120? I'm assuming you sold it.
Sold it. Uh, yeah, I sold it. It was for 500,000 ped.
Nice,
Um,
dude.
yeah, I sold it and got well, I change weapons every 3 weeks. It seems like, but I think I'm stuck with the nanochip 15 perfected now.
Okay. So is that the kinetic or you said the electric?
No, it's the electric. It's the one off the vendor.
Oh, okay, okay. The one that was the newer one at Mayhem. Got it. Okay. For some
Yeah,
reason I thought it
it's
was
the
the
one.
Finn. Yeah.
It's the one Yuzuki had.
Okay. Nice. So do you like that as like do you think you're gonna stay with it for a while, or do you have like a route you're looking to go in the future?
I don't have any plans right now. You know, my biggest thing is that I have felt like I've been shafted for some years, but I think we all have felt that way.
Yeah.
Um, the my so if you believe uh, Zoe's grid of looter inefficiency, which I mean he put in the effort, so I think it's pretty legitimate. It gives you a good idea of what you know around the TT returns that you should be getting, right? I have under no combinations of such have ever gotten close to those numbers in any way, shape, or form, either by, um, you know, efficiency and looter combinations as a whole, or by types. So I even look in my spreadsheet by animal, mutant, and robot as well. And so the question then becomes, well, why is that? And I don't have the answer to that. My hypothesis was and is, and notice now that I'm huffing, but I don't know really now whether that is because of me stopping to use stopping skill pills, or if that's just the what's the cause and effect here is I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I do in Mayhems is I run 100% pills when I'm fully damaged, enhanced, and everything. Well, what ends up happening in Mayhem is I end up losing 40, 50,000 ped every event. And with some rare exceptions, I don't get that back. I don't get the big Hoff. I don't get the multiple series of Hoffs. I didn't get it now. And what you saw like today with the 8K, that's just what I was down that's only part of what I was down this month. So I don't expect to get it all back, right? But
Right.
my thing is, and that's part of tracking in the spreadsheets, is what are the things and activities that you're doing within the game that's influencing your returns, and how does that impact, how does that reflect your expectations?
Yeah.
And up until this week, my skill value gains have been matching my TT losses. And so that's kind of been the hypothesis. And the moment that I stop using skill pills, I'm starting to half my returns back.
Interesting.
And I don't know what's feeding what. And now that I have a lead, now that I will need to change my tracking software to try to find out on every kill mob what is the amount of skill value that I'm getting.
I mean, it kind of makes sense
see if that's
because you're not really consuming any TT when you take a skill pill, right? They're kind of just free. They're kind of just out there. So that kind of makes sense,
Well,
and from like a balancing perspective, that could play a factor because skills just don't come out of nowhere, you know?
well, and the more you decay, right?
Right.
The more skills you get. BC 120 is a good example. So I've had just about every weapon that is in this game, right? And BC 120 decays a lot. And that was the one time that I gained the most out of looter levels. I mean, I jumped up so fast while using the BC 120. It was ridiculous. I think one mayhem I gained something like 28 looter levels. Uh, it, but that, like I said, that's not free. There is an expectation that you get certain amount of skills based on your decay. Good example is like with IMK2, right? You don't expect to get a whole lot of skills because it doesn't decay as much,
So
which is the case. The same is also true with an LP70. An LP70 doesn't decay often, and I was not getting nearly as much skills as I was getting with, say now with this chip, but it doesn't decay. It shoots a lot of ammo, so I don't know how to feel about that. But I am shooting trippers, right, with a lot of kill bonuses.
right.
And I don't think that people understand how much skill value, if you shoot a lot, how much skill value you get every week. In the last 2 weeks, I've gotten 3,500 head of skill value every week. So if I'm using skill pills on top of that, and if it is impacting my returns in any way, that's an issue, because that's roughly 2% already of value to what I cycle.
It's an interesting hypothesis for sure, and I'd be interested to hear more about your findings to it as well. But I think you're coming from a place of logic and reason, and definitely tracking your cause and effect. There's nothing wrong with that either. So, the decay part is interesting too, but I don't know how I feel about the decay as much as I feel about the HP to level ratio of mobs impacting it that you're actually grinding.
Yeah, so I'm gonna misquote this, I'm sure, but there's two different types of skill gains. There's one that increases your skill line, increases your skill lines, and there's another that increases, which I think is ultimately your decay, increases the value of that line. So decay, or at least the cost per shot, we'll just go with that instead of decay, certainly impacts the skill value that you get. And then you have the skill pills, which are supposed to increase the skill lines.
But the frequency of skill gains, right? So like when you say skill
Yep.
lines, you're talking about like lines of text in system.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The frequency of the skill, whatever it may be, because it's all random, whether you get, like the electro skill, or you get force harmony or intuition or whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while before I work through this hypothesis, because I just can't just look at what I've got right now and say, okay, yes, it does impact that. I mean, it would make more sense if I didn't have this Hoff, and maybe I could take that out of the equation and see, but this 8K kind of throws any. I'm not going to have any loss this week, so it's going to be a little difficult to kind of see the difference, but it's going to take me a couple months to go through it, and in reality, the only way I'm really going to find out is if I look at it at a per kill basis instead of a summary basis.
Right. So how do you work around multipliers like that with your tracking? Like do you have a method to exclude those from like your returns, or do you just include them?
Yeah, I mean, all the Hoffs are included.
Okay.
I don't I certainly don't believe in a personal loot pool. Certainly can't because of this person who just got the 515,000. Um, they didn't lose 515,000. But that doesn't mean that one could something that can algorithmically can keep you to a certain percentage, and there's a possibility that you get some kind of hit from the bonus pool, but I have no idea. But as far as my returns go, everything is included.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, Mindark's also gone public and said there's no such thing as a as a personal loot pool, right? And I don't think that programmatically it would be a nightmare to even track it or begin, right? So I tend to agree with you there, at least on that front. So
It would, but there are things that have occurred within the universe that would tell you that there's something that keeps you from really, um, I don't know the word I want, from really going well beyond multiple standard deviations out of the norm. Good example is guy goes, I think this was a couple years ago, guy goes and does a lot of explosive gambling, probably loses 10, 15, 20,000 ped, goes and shoots a couple Proteron and gets it back.
yeah,
I've done that multiple times with mining, with hunting, and then go and mine and like with 2 drops and I get it back. I I'm not saying that they're related, but I mean I can't imagine that this is completely set up like a slot machine where you would just you could perpetually lose for months on end.
yeah.
So we'll never know because it's a black box. All we can do is speculate, look at our spreadsheets, look at our numbers, and determine whether or not that what we see is acceptable play or risk to continue playing. That's pretty much how I look at it. And
That's a pretty fair assessment overall. So getting off of the, I guess, for I don't know what I want to call them, like loot theories for now. Do you, as an older player, find it like, I don't know, sort of like a need to educate people who are new coming in, or do you just kind of watch the bonfire from a distance? You know what I mean?
I'm certainly watching the bonfire from a distance.
Okay.
I mean, there are multiple times where people will message me because they'll read my bankroll thread,
Yeah.
which blew up a lot more than I thought it would, and I think it did while I had quit, and then it got stickied, and take that for whatever it's worth. But I don't have a problem with asking questions, but for the most part, within a couple people, I generally keep to myself. I just do my thing and hunt, you know, away from folks for the most part. See me on Flesh Rippers because it's quiet here, and or might go to next island, or find me in a sparsely dense set of mobs with 8 green dots. And part of that is my own thing. I get a lot of anxiety with that, just seeing a lot of green dots. I just, it's a lot of, I play the game to be relaxed and not have to do much work. And there was a there was a time up until recently where I was playing on a controller, um, and so to try to work around and maneuver around a lot of people, um, that's a headache. That's also why I don't do melee. Um, Trying to do any kind of melee weapon, and then like Easter Mayhem, for example, uh, that really sets off a lot of emotion that I don't want to deal with. and that's a me thing. Some people like it. I don't.
Yeah, no, Melee's a bit of a love-hate relationship. Like right now, I still have the Reaper Blade, you know, so it's a bit of a headache to try to manage, especially if you're like semi AFK macroing during the workday, which I do. So it's kind of hard, you know, to manage it, you know, in like an event type system or around other people even. So I totally get where you're coming from. It's a bit of a hassle because you can get swarmed with like a group of mobs and shit. So
Well, and what I pointed out with Eastern Mayhem is that the animations of the mobs prevent you from attacking the mob that you're on,
yeah,
and so it becomes very quickly quite stressful.
yeah,
As well as you need the armor to be able to handle, for lack of a better phrase, getting gangbanged by all these mobs. And I just don't I just don't care for it. Now I say that given that probably the next weapon I have might very well be melee. So who knows?
you going for the mod nano?
Um, well, that's what I got screwed out of.
Uh
Um,
oh.
yeah, it's a story that I'll tell you in private. I won't tell you in public
Yeah, well,
because that's a massive bomb. But um, yes,
I think I might
and
know. This was recently, right? This was like today recently, right?
no, this was a bit ago,
Okay, then
and
not the guy
and
I'm thinking about then. Okay, cool.
no.
I mean, we can cut it
But
out of the Q&A if you want to just, or the VOD if you just want to tell it in front of 45 of our closest friends right now. But no, I'm not I'm not
no,
gonna pressure you, man. We'll talk about it offline.
no, because despite that, I like to throw bombs and grenades. I'm not gonna put a target on my back, and mentioning it would in fact do so. So my point is that I may very well do it, but with that being said, I also believe if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And so if it ends up being that by the time that I'm capable of pulling it, that the chip still works, the chip can get up to 300 plus DPS. So I don't see a reason to change it. So melee
Gotcha.
has inherent difficulties with losing active DPS time. So
Yeah.
um, uh, there's pros and cons that need to be weighed.
Yeah. I would say that one of the biggest, I guess, draws that people have towards melee is the avatar progression that you get with melee. Just the raw amount of HP that you gain and the amount of avatar progression that you can see with a melee line of weaponry. So I guess for some people that is worth the payoff, right? So I guess it's just something everyone has to weigh out for themselves.
Yeah, and that doesn't work for me because if anybody remembers my path and journey, I had an entire thread dedicated to it. I had the Mako, and so I grinded 200 swordsmen with that for that, and used it up until they got rid of the entire 1.0 system. Not too long after I maxed that sword, and
Man.
yeah, it brings back some raw emotion them doing that. But point is that much of the skill that I would have otherwise earned, HP and otherwise, I've already gotten that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, and plus, like, with you already at that level, I mean, sure, at the time it sucked probably for 1.0. Like, just to have maxed it, and then you basically got the rug pulled out from under you. I didn't mean to make a pun there, but, you know. um, but, like, you still have the skills now for the mod nano if you get one, right? So you don't have to worry. I know there's a lot of people rushing down the mod nano sib, so you're already sitting comfortable for that. So there is some good in that, right? So some positive you can take
I
away.
think I'm missing 9 levels of hit. My damage is well beyond maxed, but you know how hit is.
Right.
But maybe by the time that I get it, I will have already been maxed just because of other skills. It is going up, so
Gotcha.
yeah, we'll see. It's not a priority. This chip is really good, and has a 5% decay on it, so I'm pretty much burning all my shrapnel really, really fast. It has that advantage, and I really don't, I don't, I don't see any reason to change.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. You know, especially I think after a certain amount of time, you've kind of just been around, used everything you wanted to use, and time just to chill and sit back, you know, kind of thing. So, what armor are you rocking right now?
With that being said,
Oh,
Mind Art
God.
can more than happy drop one of the Siren gun into my inventory. I'll be perfectly happy with that. But until then, I'm pretty much where I'm at.
What armor are you rocking right now, if I may ask?
I just rebought Shadow.
Nice.
So I have Shadow and some incision plates because the armor that I have borrowed, which was the Siren armor, I just doesn't cut it. I mean, nothing cuts it the way you want, but Shadow is the best that you can get without paying you know, a brand new car for.
Yeah.
And or getting lucky with a bunch of new armor drops. It seems to be the best, and then it's just getting the plates to go with it.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that the twin Protector of Empire looks. Like it's a very refreshing looking armor. I like the graphics, I like the stats, but god damn the price tag, man. Holy crap. So it's a lot. So I see where you're coming from, and I like Shadow. I think it pairs well with the incisions plates for the stab that you get there. So definitely are sitting good with armor in my opinion too. I think some of the Supremacy sets recently sold for quite a high price tag as well. So I think all the high-end armor's in high demand right now. Tough market.
Yeah, I mean everybody's getting ready for migration, whatever that's going to be. Anything impact related is going to push its price. Supremacy would be nice, but again, it goes back to having too much invested. I can invest everything all day long. I can invest $150,000, but if I'm not getting, ultimately, if I'm not getting the rare drops that goes with it, it's not going to be worth the investment. And that's the takeaway of having that much invested and having BC 120 and all of that. Yes, I would rock the Mayhems. That is, in fact, what I was doing.
Yeah.
There was a price to pay for that. And I just didn't feel like I could justify the price. Being able to get in the game to where I'm net zero, where I'm playing with, we'll just say house money, is far more important to me than treating this as if the money that's in here is X amount of shares in Apple, right? That's not, or any stock, that's not the mode that I'm at. So when I sell things and I've swapped things, it's been in that mind where I've really wanted to get to where I've had most of my capital out. And I'm hoping that by the end of the year that will be the case, but I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, that's a good approach to have, man. I mean, I hope you reach that goal, genuinely. Yeah, I saw that trend for a while. I was kind of keeping up with you. I think when you came back from break number 3, maybe? Or maybe it was your most recent one that you came back from. But I remember when you came back with the BC 120, you had those, like, you were going crazy trying to find those sites and stuff, you know, and then you were going crazy with Mayhem. You made a couple good pulls and stuff, so that was cool to see. And I think I actually hit you up at one point to buy something that you pulled, but it's been a hot minute since then, so...
Yeah, I don't remember what that was, but
I can't even remember either. So I think it was like a BP 130 or something maybe, but or 120. I don't know.
I had the 110.
The 110.
What I pulled was the BP 110 improved.
That would have been it
And
then.
the story that I will tell you in private is revolving around that pull.
Oh,
Um,
all right. It gets juicy. So, yeah, cool, man. So what ring setup are you currently rocking with the electric fin?
Christmas 22 and summer 20. I am very much a believer in lifesteal. So, that's the trade-off with Melee is that you get that free with the amps. But
Yeah.
uh, when you don't, you have these two rings.
Yeah, I was actually able to part with my mod resto when I originally bought the Reaper blade. The first time that I owned it, it was part of the trade that I made for it. And I never missed the mod resto, man, not with the lifesteal for Melee. And now with the Tesla pet? You kidding me? Electrotherapy's broken, man.
I mean, you don't need to say that. I just got done buying
Okay,
a low
sorry.
level. Yeah, you don't need to have. I mean, that would be the one thing they actually fix or change. I mean, it's not broken. It's what they intended it for. I think if anything, they probably ought to make it cost a little bit more. But I think they ended up doing that by product by now that the markup of the Nutrio is twice as much as it was because everybody's got their stupid little bunny.
For the
But
record, I had no idea that you just purchased one, just so you know. That was... I wasn't trying to, like, upset you or anything, man. Like, I just...
no, you didn't. You didn't. There's not much that doesn't upset me except for maybe Mind Dark and some of these players. But no, I just bought one because specifically I intended at some point to push myself and actually probably stream again. And so nobody wants to see anybody shoot flesh rippers. I mean, Entropia as a whole streaming is boring. So it's got to be something else. And so, in order for me to do, say, big bulks or drone exterminators or any of that kind of stuff, I need the
some survivability,
electrotherapy.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's great that you're planning on getting yourself back out there with streaming, man. It's been a great privilege for me to be able to stream this game, and I do agree that some of the content here is kind of dry. I mean, to be honest, most people probably like watch me, I think, just for the commentary. I mean, I could be sitting here sweating right now, I think so. Very few times do I see myself captivated by the raw gameplay of this game when I watch a stream, and it's a pity. It really is. I think that I would like to see more RDI content, because I think a lot of players are outside that RDI range, and going back to what you were saying earlier about there being more engaging content with the community, I've personally run a C1 key, and that takes a lot of coordination, and it's fun as shit. So I would love to see more of that type of material being produced for the community to consume.
I personally don't see why they don't do. I do because maybe the engine doesn't allow it. But why couldn't you have more dungeon type systems and mechanics within the game? That you have the same looking for group and looking for raid type mechanics within this game. You can certainly do that. Doesn't mean that the end result is you kill a boss like within the A1, B1, C1 stuff. But it does mean that if you get to the end of that particular dungeon, you might be able to open a chest that might have something in it. It might be, some tier comps. I mean, the player base as a whole is so desperate for loot of any kind. They would take that. They would take tier comps. They need that. They need gems. They need, those kinds of things. Cosmetics in this game, being able, and all the customizations, tapping into painting, customizing your clothes or hell, even your armor.
Yeah.
What if I wanted my shadow to be pink? Why can't I have that? I should be able to do. I don't, by the way.
Yeah.
But let's just say that I do. Why can't I have that? Why is it
Yeah.
not customizable? It seems completely pointless to have coloring and other mechanics within the game and then not use it.
Yeah. And I mean, you get a
Um,
handful of items that are customizable. I think everything should be customizable by default. And I've actually had an idea that you should have a weapon skin that you can customize similar to like a face mask, right? And you can actually take that between weapons. Like it should be able to fit different weapons and stuff. Like I think that would be fun. But
well, think about even a side market where you have players that have those skills or grow those skills to create those skins that then apply them onto limited weapons, and those limited weapons, you know,
yeah,
uh, have those effects, and maybe they don't use them. Maybe they just end up being props on a mannequin or something inside their apartments that they don't visit. I don't know, but maybe you have a profession that is inscriptor, right? And those inscriptors allow them to inscribe buffs on limited weapons. And there are things that the company could do if they would take the time to actually do them, and they could do them within the. I guarantee you, they could do them with the engine that they've got. But instead, they put all their efforts into just changing and only changing a couple of rows into a database and saying that they did this massive update,
mm,
and that that doesn't work. Yes, doing some quality of life updates, the shrapnel auction stuff and the nano cubes and maybe even putting the pills up there in auction house. Those are all important, and they did a good job in doing that. But those are entirely small things that a normal programmer could do in
yeah,
an hour.
yeah,
What
uh,
I'm talking about are big fundamental things that not only would keep players engaged, they would also stop players from just doing the same damn thing all the time. Particularly like myself, who's been doing a couple of mobs, because what else is there to do, really?
right.
At least if you want survivability of some kind, there isn't a whole lot to do unless you're going to take some risk. And unless you're getting rewards and benefits, you're not really willing to take the risk. And I'm fairly risk adverse.
Right.
Um, some people aren't, and they get rewarded, and it's fine.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single person sitting there reading the version notes for the updates and being like, "Oh fuck yes, finally they fixed the trees at Boreas." You know, like no one's gonna get hyped over that shit. You know, it's always like these meaningless changes, and like I kind of get upset over the things that they fix without saying that they changed them, or the changes they make without saying they changed them. Like, stop fucking with shit without telling us about it. Like, there's real money at stake here. If I go out and expect something to happen, it should happen, or you should tell me that you changed it from happening, right? Without going into specifics, right? But
Well, and sure, and nobody asked for the little mechanic that they added, that little particle effect when you looted them off. Nobody asked for that.
yeah,
Does it look nice? Sure. Um, does it look nice with people who play on high graphics? Yeah, probably. I don't know how many people actually do that. But it isn't game breaking. It doesn't change anybody's life. It looks visually appealing. Basically, I think what ended up happening is that you did that in Unreal 5 and realized, oh, I could do this in this way in this current engine, and patted yourself on the back for it.
yeah. It was kind of random when I saw it too. Sorry,
There
I'm
are.
getting distracted with chat right now. Sorry.
I'm not looking at chat. I can only imagine the things that are being said, but there are a lot of bugs and defects that people have been asking for that are just not that difficult to fix. Just look at the things that Hammer have been complaining about, the issues with the launchers.
Yeah,
Just I don't know how much I have to repeat it, but give a damn about your platform. We still play it. You still have to care about it, even though I know that you probably just want to keep the lights on until you do Unreal 5. But the meme is that Unreal 5 will cure everything and probably even cancer. It's not. If you're not gonna, I mean, I know you're not doing a straight port, but the same mistakes that you made in the current engine, you're gonna make the same mistakes in the future version in different ways if you're not even capable of taking a little bit of time to 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 fix what you got for years.
Yeah. It's a shame, man. Man, I feel like we've been on such like a negative vibe lately, man. I'm sorry about that. I hate to bring that out. But I mean, I also feel like there's a lot of constructive feedback that Mind Art could take from this conversation, for real. I think like I actually suggested to them to have backpacks with actual like mechanical benefits with like the increased carry weight or inventory capacity for slots. Which I'm happy they did that with RDI. And now we're also seeing it with the shove spines and things like that. So there are things that they're listening, at least that I can see, and they're starting to sort of treat, I think, this current engine as like a playground to test how we're going to react to certain things before CryEngine, or sorry, Unreal. Jesus. But yeah, I think there's good stuff still along the way, so.
Yeah, this time period right about now up until middle of June is about the time when they do like big upheavals.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious what they'll do for the next migration. Personally, I'm hoping that's when they'll introduce the token system for this event, but I'm probably being too hopeful.
Yeah.
But like I said, generally the really big changes that they've done have been done right about this time. So I'm very curious as to what they'll do. Yes, we've kind of been negative, or I wouldn't say negative, but really just doing a lot of constructive criticisms of the company, for which I have much of. For
There's actually a question that just came in.
It still
from,
remains. I'll give them some.
Sorry, you can go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to
I'll
cut
give
you
them
off.
some. Yeah, I'll give them some positivity. They've been able to keep this game running for 20 years plus. So they're certainly doing something right. I think they have a lot of untapped potential. They always have. I just wish, and part of that's my frustration. But what you hear, and what you see in PCF is that if they just took a little extra time, they could really do a lot. They could really attract a lot. They could have retained a lot, right? Because this is only one. It's a one of a kind, and I just feel like with a little bit of extra work or attention, that they could go a really long way. So when you see me on PCF getting a bit uppity, just know that that's the prism I'm looking through it as, is that I'm wanting them to, I want them to succeed, and I don't feel like what I'm asking for is that difficult.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, man. So there was a question from Fight Club, or Sunade, in chat here, asking what your favorite weapon has been from all of the ones that you've used so far.
I will say that it was the BC 120. And it was the BC 120 that made me realize that and the joke was, I had a taste of DPS, and I don't want to go back. I sold the BC 120 only because I had too much money in the game, and we eventually moved, and that money actually went to buy a solar panel system for the farm that I eventually bought.
Nice.
So it went to good use.
Yeah.
But the DPS that the weapon had was it's amazing. I mean, it's very addicting, and so like when I say that, it may very well be that it's the mod nano that I would go to if I have the opportunity. It's going to be because of that same DPS. And I got the chip because at max T10 I would have the same DPS that I have with the BC 120. It's about 300. Actually, I pushed it to 340 with buffs. At least that's what my tracker had. And I pushed DPP to 5. So it was a lot. But like I said, I had $150,000 into the game. I had the best of the best. I had sights and scopes. It was a lot of effort to get to that. And what I eventually realized is it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth having all of that invested. You could do it for much less, or I didn't want it at all. I wanted the money back, and so that's what I went. So short answer is BC 120.
Gotcha.
Also, I wanted to bring up that I really love Kitty, and I love when she ends up sending me all the pictures that she does every week.
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out. Who do you love? Sorry?
Kitty.
Oh.
Kitty Fire. She sent me a PM saying that I had to say that. So.
Oh, okay. That's funny. So there was another kind of question / comment that came in, because I know we've already touched on, you know, you've owned land areas in the past. So Princess Issa asked, you know, she was just kind of curious what your experience was for the effort and risk versus reward from just general land area ownership. She just kind of wanted your point of view on the subject. Like, is it overall worth it, would you say, you know?
It is dependent upon what you make of it. You know, having a land area in 1.0 is different than having a land area in 2.0. The tolerance for player tax, is different between those two versions. Take it for whatever it is. I know there's the joke with Forgo and all. With 1.0, you could manage a 3, 4, 5% tax on a land area because of your DPP. However it was being paid, we can have those arguments and debates. It's not really relevant. You could stomach that. It's difficult to stomach tax in a land area in 2.0, especially with markup the way it is. Probably those that are able to stomach it ends up being the ones that have like rare items, so ones that have shopkeeper pads, but again, those are pretty rare. And mining at LAs, where you have a good chance of putty, or when Ignesium was 2%, and those. Outside of that, you have more jackpot based, which Mindark limited the ability to do that kind of stuff a couple years ago. You know, the events that are being done. So a good example is MS Pudding does a really good job with her events. And then there's a lot of land areas that do the bare minimum and do the same thing that has always been done throughout the years, and it just doesn't cut it. In terms of ROI, the general ROI for a land area is probably somewhere, if you're doing, we'll say average, is somewhere between 10 and 15%. If you're lucky, I think. You were going to have to put a lot of work into it. And the only reason why Arcadia LAs were able to do what they did, at least back then, and to generate what they did, is because they had unique mobs. And they didn't have codex then, so at the time, like Sangra LA mobs all had athletics and alertness um, repeatables. So there was that draw as well. They also had a lot of nice markup and whatnot. Um, are they worth it compared to what you can get now outside of the game? Probably not. Um, Plus, I have a thing like I talk about with my investments in the game is to stay liquid. The world is a rough place now, and having money in, I mean, you can get 5% now anywhere, and most people who were in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and whatnot made a lot more than they could have ever made in land areas if they're savvy. Um, so I would never own another land area unless it was one that I really wanted and that I would hunt on for myself. I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I kind of stayed away from land area ownership because I knew that it was going to require planning, and I would have to treat it like a project, you know, to make it into something. Like I would have to do something similar to what I've seen like Miss Pudding do, like what you said before, you know, and you know, versus like just getting something with like a unique or semi-unique mob and just set it and forget it, like you said, with the ones that go with the minimalistic effort approach. So but yeah, no, that's cool stuff, man.
Well, and it's not just that, but if you were to base your land area on globals, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't until recently Entropia Life kind of changed their system a bit, and that assumes that there's even enough trackers on the LA to begin with. If you've got one on Calypso, that's generally not a problem, but on Arcadia was you have there's a lot of bad actors in this game, probably more so than you probably realize. And as a land area owner, one of the things that we eventually realized was that there was a certain few, won't name names, we know who they are, who were injecting globals into Entropia Life. They 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 were cheating the system, and it was not just that they were getting the rewards from big industries and Entropia Life. We had to pay for that, the land area owners. And so they were stealing from us, which then made it very difficult for us to to
So
break even for that matter.
I this
And
first time hearing about this shit. Full disclosure for me, I don't how what the fuck, like how do you do that? Was it just like a couple people like spoofing or changing their local tracker software, like, and then they overrode it somehow? Like, you don't have to name names. I'm just curious about the specifics of how the fuck that was feasible. How do you achieve that?
I won't get into how feasible it is, but it isn't that difficult. What I will just say is that the tracker only reads a chat log. So if you
Oh,
manipulate the chat log, you can get it to do anything.
but you all right, yeah. Well, let's not get into that, I guess. But it's, man.
Now, Entropia Life has gotten smarter, but there are still people who do that. And so there are people who do run the events that have alternate measures to check and make sure that that's not happening.
So
But
it's
there was a
interesting.
couple of months that, towards the end of my land area ownership, there was an issue that we had on land with the Arcadia servers. We were losing roughly about 1% of whatever tax volume it was. We couldn't figure out why. In 1.0, a land area, as long as maturities didn't change, a mob would give a certain amount of money, guaranteed within a range, per global. It was right on the dot. It wouldn't change. The variation usually depended upon the DPP of the individuals. Um, and so if I got 20 globals, I knew that I was going to make this amount of money in tax revenue. That's how it worked. I don't know how it works in 2.0 because I don't have LAs, but I know it doesn't work that way anymore. Because you can fake it. You can fake it with armor decay and everything else, right? So um, suddenly, within these 2 or 3 months, it drops. It drops about 1%. We couldn't figure out why. It was happening across all the LAs that had big industry events running on them. We went to MindArc and had them investigate. We did our own investigation. Turns out people were injecting globals into the system. Now, Big Industries has since then many times over, and it's the reason why they've increased the tracker threshold and they've done other coding, but that was the reason why.
Interesting, man. Yeah, I never heard about this. I guess this was before my time with this being an issue, but I remember being asked by a certain land area owner for my chat logs in a certain time frame if I was online on a planet. And unfortunately, I was not able to oblige them because I was not online at a given time. But I guess now I can kind of understand why they would want to do like a fact check. And I remember there being issues with another land area owner with the site itself being vulnerable to attack, and you could just manipulate the score on the local page for the website that I brought up to them and got it fixed. But that wasn't like an injection. That wasn't like a global injection issue on Entropia Life. And in that one, they actually were able to resolve the issue and fact check against Entropia Life. But I wouldn't have thought of Entropia Life as being inaccurate because of that. So that's interesting. Any other cool stories from land area ownership, or was that basically the biggest, weirdest thing that you had happen?
I mean, that was the negative thing that happened, but I mean, having those 3 land areas, the journey that it took to get there, with the exception of the Lillian stories and the scams and exploits that happened there, not with me, but just the stories that went around there and that kind of thing, which again, private conversation stuff, stuff I can tell you in private, but I think most people know the Lillian saga, and maybe that person's still in the game and another alt that has been burned, but it was a very fun experience. It was, I mean, that's why I started streaming. A lot of the friends, a lot of why I have folks in my friends list was because of that journey. All the runners that I had doing the instant keys wouldn't be running any instances for the most part because they're all 80% scams. I'm the reason why we have the solo and team splits in the ACUS instances is because I brought up and did all the math around how those systems, those keys worked. And even the Planet Partner developers didn't know that MindArc was limiting returns on instances at about 80%. And so they split it to solo so that you could at least get your, basically like hunting any particular mob, but you didn't get the trade-off of pretty much guarantee. You're basically trading off TT return for markup.
Right.
Then getting the second LA, and then I think I ponied up for the third LA. I do have regret with the third LA because that was money that I could have otherwise put in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin at the time was, I think, $1,200. But coulda, woulda, shoulda, I suppose. I mean, It's a bit of an oof. I eventually got my money, through other means, but that's why I'm retired now. But I would have liked to have had the land areas longer. I would have liked to have been, more. I would like to, like I said, still have them and be able to hunt on them and whatnot. But it kind of is what it is. The relationships and friendships that I have incurred as a result of having those land areas, they'll always be invaluable.
Right.
And as cliche as that sounds, it is actually legit.
Yeah, no, I think I can echo that too. I've met some really nice people here, and I've cultivated a lot of meaningful relationships, through Entropia that I never really foresaw coming. So I can really attest to that, being an accurate statement. There are life-changing relationships that you're able to make here in this game, and it's once you have people like that are in your circle that you're super tight with, it's very powerful, and it's not easy to get in or out, you know what I mean? So it's pretty cool. So other than hunting, you mentioned that you diddled around with maybe diddled's not the correct word to use there, but you kind of messed around with mining and crafting a little bit when you were playing around with the multipliers and stuff. But do you mine or craft regularly, or are you just primary hunter for now?
No, I don't craft. Crafting to me is like putting your PP in acid.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just not that I've done that, but if I were to put the words in put crafting into the words, that would be it. Some people are they're successful with that. I don't know if they really are. It seems like everything that people sell on auction house is at a loss. So I don't know, at least mathematically, is at a loss, even with all the potential gems and other stuff that you could get. But that's ultimately what they go for.
Right.
Um, Plus, you need a ridiculous higher bankroll. If you were to look at my spreadsheets and you were to look at my crafting experience, it was a lot of work because I used to do mining games for a while. I had a booth on Arcadia, and I had a shop on Calypso, and I was doing mining amps. I sold a lot, and then at the end of the month, you barely made anything, and it just wasn't worth it. I
Yeah.
made more money in with 6 months doing crafting. I made more money selling the booth, the Terramp BPs, and there's something else that I sold um, combined than what I spent and all the work that I did those 6 months, just on the
Wow.
appreciation of the booth. So
Yeah.
if that tells you anything, I mean, either I really suck at it or it's just the nature of crafting, it could be both, but I think it really is more the nature of crafting. I do I do my own enhancers because I can make it cheaper than the auction house, but with my blueprints are all maxed out. But um, that's just self-sufficiency.
Right.
And mining, um, you can't do both. You can't do hunting and mining, or at least do both with a reasonable amount of. Um, if you're gonna spend a lot of time and money in getting the gear for hunting and getting the best of the best, you have to specialize. You have to do one or the other. If and with mining, unless you're gonna go after some of the really expensive tiered component stuff, which you probably should do, but um, or do pyrite, which is exploitable by wave, and generally controlled by a couple of people, which I call the pirate cell, which is why a couple good enhancer crafters stopped doing enhancers. Um, then, and many of who sell pyrite are on my blacklist for other reasons that I won't mention here. Uh, unless you're gonna do those things, uh, you know, mining wasn't my thing. And I don't have that gambler spirit to go and do indoor. There was a time that I had the level 7 uh, finder. I've had the unlimited 5. I mean, like I said, I've had just about everything except for the 8, which I'm not gonna get that. But um, and I was doing indoor mining when hell was 2.5%, and uh, at that point, most times miners could pretty much pinpoint, or at least within a window, kind of figure out when they're going to get their big HOF. And wouldn't you know it, when I I logged off because I had to go do something, and I logged back in. The very moment I logged in, Crazy Shadow, which was a friend. I mean, I'm not salty about that. Um, he hit 55, 60K, right? And I never got my kickback from mining. So goes back to the personal loophole and all that doesn't exist. Um, I never got that figure uh, kickback, and ended up being a big waste of time because not too long after that, the ores and everything started dropping in markup and just wasn't worth the effort.
Right.
And then I think not too long ago they changed the mining system, and so at least a couple of years ago you could um, it'd be more comfortable, I suppose. Now, I mean, not so much. I mean, I did mining, I think, earlier this year, and it was about how I would describe crafting.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been much of a miner ever. I I mine when it's lootable PvP because that keeps me engaged. I find mining to be pretty boring overall. I've had a chance to play around with some high level mining gear before. Enjoyed it for about a couple weeks, and then yeah, it's been about it. So I don't know, man. Like I that was also after the mining rework, so I don't know what it was really like um, before the rework. So, but I'm sorry. It's regrettable to hear that you never got your good kickback from the mining that you did. Um, did you not see it back in hunting either?
No, no, I never saw it.
Gotcha.
No, I've only had one. To my understanding, I've only had after I think we're starting to get up to within the last 4 years. I think we're getting up to about 20 million cycled, maybe a bit more than that. I've only had one 5 digit.
Was that with hunting or?
Yeah, that was with the BC 120. It was last Mayhem, Easter Mayhem. Not this one, but the one before it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what my total cycle is, but I've only had one 5 digit as well, and that was very recently on a warlock. It's like a 12k. So
Well, and part of that is that things are limited to a 2,000 multiplier, and so hunting is. And so if you're hunting 3 to 7 ped mobs, chances are you're not going to get a 10k. I mean, if we're being realistic. So I say that I never got a 5 digit, but in lieu of that, you would expect like multiple 5, 6, 7Ks or something like that. And it just didn't. If in fact there is a loophole, right, you'd expect there to be some kind of kickbacks and things.
yeah.
With that being said, the day may be coming. I might, an Eomon might golden shower me at some point. Who knows? I've personally never done migration. I think I did back in 2014 with an unmaxed IMK2, so that didn't go very well. I think I did that for a couple days, but outside of that, I've never touched it. I will probably work the codexes this year, depending on what they do for whether it be tokens or whatever it may be. If they don't do anything, I won't touch it because there's no incentive to do it. But because most times the returns that people get are atrocious, so I don't know why I want to do another 40, 50,000 ped loss that I can't cover.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been kind of interested to see if maybe they'll re-implement the summer strong boxes with like dropping in migration. That would be cool to see. And like you said before, increase of tier comps would be cool to see. Something. Get the ball moving a little bit.
Yeah, they're not doing boxes anymore, and that's unfortunate because they really should. Um, the summer rings are being exploited to death, just like every other seasonal ring. So they're gonna have to do something.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I don't know what they're, what they'll do. Not having, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that this will be the time that they introduce the twin token system, and it would be the most opportune time for them to do it is during migration for the remainder of the year, if that was what they were wanting to do. They did say in one of their threads on PCF was that there's more things to come, whatever that means. Could mean anything, but um, we'll see.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think time will tell, and I think that I'm remaining as optimistic as possible, when it comes to that. So
I mean, I'm planning on that there's going to be some kind of draw for migration. I mean, as far as MindArc's concerned, they need it. They're now publicly traded. Um,
yeah,
they need the cycling. They need the. I mean, they did the mini mayhem for 4 days, and basically just only put tokens in the pool and said, here you go. So they certainly need the cycling. So um, they're gonna do something. We just don't know what.
yeah. I remember when the first mini mayhem hit, and it was on Crystal Palace like last year. I never even tried it. I heard from a couple of friends that it was garbage, and I never went. So did you actually try out the mini mayhem this year?
Yeah, I did. I did the robots, and I normally don't. Um, but this goes back to the not wanting to be around 8, 9 green dots, which is gonna be an issue with migration.
Right.
Uh, you know, they need to take a playbook out of Cyrene. They need to take a play out of Cyrene's handbook. They need to do dense spawns, overly dense spawns, because people have DPS for this. So, Fefox spawn is a great example.
Oh yeah.
There's more Fefox than there probably is of any mob on the entire planet. And it's all nicely densed and grouped up and ripe for the killing. That's probably one good reason why people go and kill Fefox is because of that. They can do that with other mobs. They don't need to have, like eviscerators, for example, where you have to run, you know, basically the equivalent of a mile from one to the other. And that's what they did with the robots. This mini mayhem is they put tokens into the loot pool and then didn't change the spawns. And the spawns that these little shared spawns that they have all over the place, they are densed up, but they're densed up with these mixed spawns. And a good example is I have 210 DPS with the candy cane with my chip, right? These Eviscerator Gen 8s that spawn that I think near Ashy, I can clear that entire Eviscerator spawn before it pops again.
Yeah. As a solo
And that's
hunter, right?
one and that's for one person.
Yep.
That just doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. If you're going to have a mini mayhem, if you're going to have an event, you need to flood the planet with spawns. I think you need to rework the spawns as a whole, much like you have with Legionnaires and you have Troopers. Dense them up, and and if you need the cycling, if you need the grinding, then play to your player's base, your capabilities, because you're certainly giving us all these weapons that have far more DPS than they did 5 years ago. I think it would go a long way. So I'm hoping they do that with migration, because I remember going to certain migrations and there not being a single mob anywhere. That's just not going to work. People are just going to say F it and go elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. I think there's a lot of scaling that needs to occur, and especially like you said with the average DPS and bell curve continues to rise, you know, as we progress, and especially with all of these end game weapons that are being released, you know, that we're seeing now flooding the player base. And you know, attributes are bigger, HP pools are bigger for the players. Players on average can handle bigger shit. So, this time that they up the game. But yeah, man. Oh, what's up, Yuzuki? Welcome to the stream, man. He says hi as well to you as well, Mr. Dala Dala.
That's $5, not 2.
Oh, sorry. I missed $3 there. But yeah, if you guys have questions for $5 as well, do ask in chat. I'll do my best to relay it to him as well. I'm trying to think of any others that I might have for you as well. What's your average day on Entropia? Do you just kind of wing it, or do you go into it with the game plan? Do you have any like long-term, short-term goals that you're trying to get?
Right now, not really. Trying to max out the remainder of my looters, and I eventually have to get the rest of my tier comps for my chip, but I refuse to buy them, so the cost is artificially kept too high by both the fact that there aren't, you know, there aren't there's a supply issue with hunting, but there's also people that are sitting on stacks in their storage, and you'll know them when you have people that are looking for these tier comps, and then suddenly there's a big massive stack of them on auction, abnormally large amount for a ridiculously high price, well above auction. There's people who buy them really, really low. They sit on them until they spike really high, because it is one of many of the tier comps, or sorry, they're one of many items within the game that are perpetually used. And so, because there's very little threat of them being saturated by supply, there's very little risk of them being hosed by buying them up really cheap. And so I refuse to spend 25,000 ped to tier my chip to 6.
Jesus,
I will go
man.
and farm it. I will go and farm it, and if it takes me 3 months, it takes me 3 months. But I will have paid the TT of it, and not the overall markup that I won't get back, and probably won't get back by the time I sell the chip at whatever time.
Yeah. But I mean, with the rework from tiering up stuff, now at least you get the TT back in Shrapnel, so there is a little bit there, right? So versus before, where it was just like, hey, you get some skills, and that was it. So that's good, at least. And with you doing it yourself, you know, that saves you a lot of markup, which is where you lose ped. So if you're just trading your time for TT, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't go wrong if you farm it all, or at least you farm things that you can then in turn buy the tier comps for. But the tier 6 comps are so expensive that it's just it's one of those gates that are difficult to overcome, and so I'm not worried about it. I'm sure I will have tiered it by the time the next mayhem rolls around.
Yeah. I mean, I would also argue that Arcadia has been historically one of the better planets to farm tier comps on also. I mean, I've gotten better tier comp drops on Arcadia versus Calypso for the longest time. So
yeah, sometimes, but it's also a wave as well.
True.
So while you could probably get them, and that's why some people are at Arcadia, there was a time not only a couple of months ago where you couldn't get anything on Arcadia, and not only that, but you would get 75% return on tens of thousands of pets cycled for doing it.
Yeah.
There was a big issue there, and that was just before the Planet Partners decided, hey, or sorry, before the Planet Partners changed hands. I don't know how things are now. What made Arcadia's loot stable was that historically, what made it stable was that it gave that there's a lot of oils in the loot, and so there was supply, and the supply might be much better now since it's all being converted to nanocubes. And there was also guns and high TT swords that were also in the pool. So your chances of being up were good if you got one of those. It was a little bit abnormal because you'd get a 450 TT sword on an order ruby, but it was there. That's why I always hated hunting on Calypso, and why I always loved hunting in my own LAs and Arcadia. It wasn't just because I had them; it was because the loot was always stable for me. I could, I would always get hosed when I came to Calypso, and that was when I had the best of the best DPP. But as long as I stayed on Arcadia, I was doing just fine.
Gotcha. Yeah, Fight Club said that the Arc is the only good place with high DPP. Yeah. I mean, I love Arc, especially I think because the overlap that you still get with some of the old IFN challenges as well to capitalize on. If you wanted to still do that, you've also got Rocktropia that you could in theory do. So I don't know, depends on where you're at, I suppose.
With the overlap with Arcadia, though, your missions don't progress. Though you can complete the ones you've got, but you can't get new ones.
Yeah.
Arcadia will always have a soft spot for me because I still think it's a really great planet, but I also think Cyrene is a close second for me because the same thing that I loved about Arcadia at the time, which has gone away. I hope they bring it back. But what made Arcadia really great, and with the developer support and all that, and just the story, the mobs, the composition, and just everything there, you knew that the developers were working, exists within the Cyrene development team. And so that's why you see me on Cyrene.
Yeah, I think when you said the development team, that really struck a chord with me too. Like, I've been impressed with the recent developments from the Planet Partner and development team on Cyrene as well. And Nexon's also taken strides recently as well, in my opinion, especially towards the new players, so it's always refreshing to see. It revitalizes the game, it gives it some fresh, energy, so definitely.
And I don't want to leave Next Island out to dry because they've done a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, Cyrene and Next Island, they're the top two just because Arcadia's just been stagnant for so long. And I'm not saying that because Next Island team gave me my own Mankini. It's just, they've done a lot. They've revitalized that planet, and they've got a lot on with it.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. They got what, huh?
They have a lot going on with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they're definitely the standard to meet right now when it comes to Planet Partner and overall development. I mean, Arcadia has an opportunity now to make a comeback. I think they were able to weed out some of the undesirable development team recently, so I'm hopeful they're able to get some improvement going there too. Because I mean, I remember when Arcadia was like the second biggest planet to Calypso, you know, and they had Gold Rush and all that kind of cool stuff. And I mean, they tried to do Gold Rush again, but it just wasn't what it used to be. So it was kind of a flop. But what's your I just had a question come in from Julius Dasher. He's like, "What's your opinion on Toulon DSEC / Monria?"
Short answer is I don't like it. I don't. There are. How honest do you want me to be here?
I mean, this is a safe space for you to say whatever you want to say. I'll be honest. I don't moderate my chat. It's 18 plus. We're all adults here.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I'm not.
Whatever you want to say.
If anybody knows me, safe spaces don't mean anything to me. But
well, you know what I mean. Like, I don't mean it like that, but oh well.
I don't like them. I don't also want to kneecap them for what they're doing as well. I think the things that plague those two planets and that development team is the forward-facing attitude of their staff. And I will leave it at that.
Okay.
There are people who are avoiding that planet specifically because of what they present forward.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that without also getting and stepping on toes or whatever. Like I think Julius also understands what you mean. Thank you for the question, by the way, Julius. Really great stuff. But I think I agree with what you had to say. I think there's certain situations that stick out in my mind with my interactions with Virtual Sense, and left a sour taste in my mouth a few times as well. So yeah, we can just leave that one leave that one where it lays. So anyways,
I mean the planet Toulon has potential. I mean, I'm half Syrian, so Toulon kind of resonates a little bit with me. But it needs work. I know that they would. I know they're working on it. They have potential. I think some of the time gates that they have, like this Lotus mission, I think it's absolute ass. I've been trying to get these handbands for the longest time. But you know what drops those handbands? What drops those handbands are these little level 3 mobs that are sitting in a cave. There's 3 of them, and unless you're macroing on them 24 hours a day, you're not going to really get those 60. And I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to sit on level 3 mobs. Can you get them on others? Can you get them on the bigger ones? Can you get them on the little instances that they have? Yes, you could. Their instances are expensive. It equates to about, I think, $2 or $3 an hour to use those instances. So on their surface, they have design issues, and they made it worse by, I forget what resource, the Nala fragments. They now made them more difficult to get. So I don't even know why they have instances. You know, it should be either take a page out of Arcadia's handbook with their keys and do that, or just allow people just to go into the instances 1 hour at a time. I mean, I know they have to pay for the instances and the instance time, I'm sure.
yeah.
But so do that. You know, make that work, but you know, to do that within your confined constraints. Don't make it so expensive for the player who already has a difficult road to travel. Don't make it that difficult because you're just not going to do it. There's not tolerance for that here. Um, and then the 30 days of crafting for the gates with the crown. I don't have a problem with that. Um, it just seems artificial. I don't see the point. Um, you could. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get them on the planet for longer and to generate that decay and everything else. But you can achieve the same thing in a lot less time.
Yeah.
Um, or gate it with some kind of avatar bound item drop that you get from hunting a mob or something. I don't know, but it doesn't need to be 30 days. And then there's a lot of confusion on the Monria side with their DSET 9 and whether or not that actually counts for Toulon or Monria. So that can drop a event weapon or not. And originally we were told that you could, and then you couldn't. And then I guess you can again, and then it turns out it didn't drop on the DSEC 9 mob. It dropped on one of the the Thors or whatever, and it's fine. I mean, it's a random roll. It's just, again, it all boils back down to, outside of the development things that I mentioned, it all boils down to that what they present to the player base, their forward-facing staff.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And there's like you said, there's a lot of confusion, like you said, around like the differences between the overlap between planets and what can drop what during Twin. And I mean, that going back to that, even I remember there being a lot of people that were upset that Twin items didn't continue to drop during Mayhem. And I think that would be a really big draw to continue to grind during Mayhem. Would be like, well, obviously people are going to grind during Mayhem, but there were like no drops, man. So it's a little sad, but I guess that's just Mindark kind of controlling where the cycle is, right? So,
well, Cyrene robots, which the returns were complete ass there too.
yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, and the question is why. But there was no chance for an event weapon. Everybody was basically farming for skill juice, which I don't mind the concept, but one, pushing skill juice or skill pills gives a lot of credence to, at least to me, my hypothesis about the impact of skills on TT returns, because maybe that money goes to the planet partners and whatnot, that it increases that. I won't know that. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, all good, man.
Oh, there was no event weapons. There was no draw. There was nothing.
Yeah.
It was just shrapnel and skill juice, and I'd like that at least allowed for at least after the screw up that they had, the Siren Gate 2, where you could get the armor elements and those things, and that was great. That was a great draw. But it would also been nice to also get the event weapons and whatnot there. The same thing is true with Mayhem. I was really hoping that it would at least have some kind of rain. There would be some kind of personally, my biggest chance of looting a twin weapon was in Mayhem. Come to find out, nobody looted anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
I mean, it sucks too for planet partners also. I mean, like that was the main thing, was like the ped cycle is going straight into Mindark's pocket, and we're getting all-time low amounts of like good limited drops within Mayhem. It's like you're going for only shrapnel, a handful of output components, and maybe a rare token. And you're farming for some Regulite ears and a Harbinger mask, you know, and like a pet. A fucking pet, you know? It's like unimaginative, you know. It's copy paste, it's, you know, very lackluster. It's like they just recycled the same thing. And it's gonna take these folks years, if not, you know, half a year at least to level these pets up to get the auto loot benefit. Like, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of an equalizer to a degree, with these electro pets that we have, Tesla pets.
yeah.
I say that to a degree. I mean, you're gonna have to spend a lot to level them up, but and they also cost a lot to run. But it made it more extreme for everybody. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to do that, and that's fine. But Mayhem is going to be Mayhem, right? You're farming. You're basically paying Mindark the grind fee, which for me was a lot, for the tokens and boxes that really weren't worth much anymore in box time. And I personally don't have a problem with that because I'm hoping to pull something. But you know, you always had the opportunity for something else. You had Mayhem armor,
Yeah.
which I've looted once. I don't know if anybody looted anything. They may have, I don't know. And then there was sort of the expectation that you also looted. You looted the Unreal tokens too, but
Yeah.
You also had the opportunity. There was the expectation to loot the, you know, an event weapon, whether it be some, considering the level of the mobs, it could have been, you know, any like small little gun, could be an Apollo, could be anything. But there's that. I think Mindark as a whole is missing why people, they look back at the old days and look at it as, you know, I won't say glory days, but they look at it fondly, and it's that they look in their loot pool or their bags or the loot window, and they see, you know, 5 weapons and a FAP and whatever. And I still think, and the same thing is true like when you play Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 or Path of Exile and you have these big loot explosions, right? And there's also a reason why players, they don't really want to be attentive or stream this game, is because it's all dopamine, right? People love playing Path of Exile and Diablo games and to have this big, massive loot explosion, or to, you're playing Path of Exile and suddenly you loot a Divine Orb, and you're like, yeah, that's great, or a mirror,
Oh,
or
dude,
something.
a fucking mirror would be insane. But yeah.
Yeah, but if you looted a mirror, you'd shit yourself, right?
Yeah.
And the possibility to loot a mirror is
It's
far
always there.
greater than looting a rare item in this game.
Yeah.
Right? We're not talking about you know, Sinew or any
Right.
like full plate thing, but it's that, and that's what keeps you hooked, is that dopamine. It's all psychological. And so Mindark could have, just for this event, could have just as easily said, to get the twin weapon or whatever, you needed a certain amount of tokens, you needed the old version of the weapon, and you needed, I don't know, a little bit of ped, I don't know, 1,000 ped or something. You needed the old weapon, you needed the you know, some platinum tokens or something, and some other little gate, maybe even some mayhem tokens, and you'd get that weapon, and there's a certain amount of those. And you could have put those old weapons, or you could put limited versions of all of them out into the economy. The limited ones would be spent much like they've done with the ELM weapons of old. it could have been done differently.
Yeah.
And they what they did is they went and did the same old copy paste system. I think that's what rubs people the wrong way a lot about what the Mind Arc does, is because a lot of things just seem to be low effort and copy paste.
Yeah, no, I agree with
And
that.
maybe that, and maybe that, to be fair to Mind Arc, that might be all that they can do, because they put all their effort in Unreal 5, and to do anything like we were talking about might, um, you know, take a lot of resources, which I personally disagree with. Like what I just mentioned, wouldn't take a whole lot of effort at all, just some balancing. Um, and maybe that's what we'll see in Unreal 5. I have absolutely no idea. But what I do expect is to have that communication, that kind of transparency, that hey, look, we're not doing these kinds of things because this is where our effort is, and here are the things that we are anticipating come on, in Unreal 5. Hype it up.
Yeah.
Get people excited. Get people, if they're excited, they're going to invest. They're going to invest in their character now. They're going to buy these Unreal tokens. They're going to, instead of laughing at them, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, all these things aren't going to be worth anything.
Right.
Nobody understands, what the gravity of these tokens are. They're just trying to get rid of them now, before they have no value.
Yeah.
At least that's the feedback I'm getting, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, you just look at the trade chat, look at what they're selling for. I mean, people are scarred, like you said earlier, by Compet and other flops before from the deed system, so why would this be any different? But they don't understand, like, oh, these are going to be like this is going to be like a system-wide, a universe-wide deed, right? So this will be the most powerful version of a deed or share that we've ever seen. And people are treating it like, yeah, fuck it. I'm just going to take my 19 whatever ped now. Or hell, it might even be less. It's been like a week since I logged into the game.
It's a lot less.
So,
yeah, it's 13.4 now, because
so
because the tokens were only being propped up by the resellers and one person who was buying them all.
Yeah.
Who was explosive gambler. At least as far as I know, it was really one person. It could have been maybe two, but it was really only one person was buying my stacks. So that person's not buying them anymore. So what's happened? They've gone from 20 down to 13.4.
Yeah.
And who knows where they'll go now? Maybe 13 is where it should be. I don't know. Right now I'm keeping all mine until maybe it goes back up, or maybe I'm stuck with them all. I don't know. I'm really just looking at them as, I don't know, maybe I need them at some point for tier comps. I don't know.
I don't know, man. So someone asked if it was Andrew Viper Ang, who you're talking about, that was buying them all.
No.
Okay.
It was Sesabe. Sesabe.
Okay. But no, I know that the Andrew Viper Ang was the guy who basically exploited the inaccuracy of Arcadia Moon Deeds at Fort Argus. So basically what he did was he bought up a bunch of Arcadia Moon Deeds for dirt cheap from players, and then just literally went and sold them to the fucking Argus bank for more. And I brought that to light on PCF a long time ago, but that's why I know the name Andrew Viper Ang, and I know he's back lately. So
that probably, there was a time, I think it was this one, I remember, because I was friends with Zeppu, and I got a hold of him and told him that was happening.
Yeah, I shot him a message too as soon as I found out about it in game. But that sucked for him. I mean, that really sucked for him. That's a lot of ped. I mean, it was a lot of ped.
Yeah, I don't know how much it was, and I don't, was it the Moon Deed you said?
Yeah, the AMDs. Because I stumbled upon it when, I'm not going to name names, but a certain person who was reselling for him let me onto it, like what was going on. And then I fucking whistle blew, man. I was like, nah, this is fucked. Everyone needs to know about it. Because people were letting go of PED. So. Okay, so good news is Sunade or Fight Club says that the guy sold them later for profit, which is good to hear. So I'm glad to hear that the bank owner didn't lose out too bad. But yeah, wild stuff, man. Gotta stay on it. Ever-changing landscape. So what are some of the information feeds that you ingest for the game, other than like the coming soon bulletin, maybe Discord and PCF? Are there any other like channels of information that you look for in the game?
Yeah, there's a Swedish coffee shop bulletin.
You fucking with me?
I mean, obviously.
Okay, okay. Well, I didn't know. Like, you had like some sort of like security camera hacked right outside of a Swedish coffee shop or something, and you're just sitting there looking at it. But
I mean, that was the joke, right? Since he
yeah,
had inside access because of the coffee shop.
yeah. But yeah, no, it was a good one. I was genuinely curious though, like if you like had anything that you like kept an eye on that most people weren't aware of, or maybe it's like your everyday, like you wake up, you get your morning coffee, and then you read like the top 10 new post on PCF or something. You know, I don't know.
No, that would be absolutely foolish. I mean, I try to stay away from PCF as much as possible because generally, as it is, at any time I go to PCF, I want to quit. So, I mean, it is a, again, it goes back to my comments about forward-facing things, plus the over moderation.
Yeah.
It's not good. But with that being said, that is a reflection of the sentiment of a certain segment of your population. And part of that sentiment is fueled by much of what we've talked about in the last couple of hours. So, you know, if they improve those things, then the sentiment on PCF largely wouldn't be as bad as it is, because it's progressive. I mean, it's gotten worse. There's always going to be those that troll, including myself, for that matter, because it's hard to take a lot of stuff seriously. But
Yeah.
And I have a lot of disdain for certain few individuals that are bad actors, and so sometimes you see that pop up every once in a while, just to be perfectly candid. But short answer in terms of additional feeds and things, I'm not sure that there are any. But no, you know, you get the patch notes and the occasional announcements when there's a reset or a maintenance. But there's not a whole lot that's happening within the game changes. It's been pretty flat for things.
Okay.
Except for planets. Planets still, you know, the various planet channels within the game that I will occasionally look at. You know, you see, well, there's an Arcadia event tomorrow, and you know, those kinds of things. It's probably the most meaningful information that you get is within those planet channels when the occasional official pops in.
Yeah. Sorry, chat's getting me again. Fucking vegetation notes. I think we already remarked on that one, like how stoked we would be for, you know, the trees in Boreas to be fixed again. So yeah. Yeah, I think Roar also says, I think he says he thinks that you're joking since when did Mindark do proper patch notes? So
Well, if you remember, I had entropialoot.com, and it was because
I
they
do
weren't
remember that.
doing
Yeah, I do remember that.
they weren't doing patch notes. And so my goal was just to simply aggregate. I think what Hypnotic was doing there for a while, and I think O2 is doing it now. Is to takes all the Planet Partner nodes, which now MindArc is now doing. They now do a Bertha bot with all the relevant news gates of the Planet Partners. If you notice, they're basically doing that. However, it was to take all the news from all the Planet Partners and post it in one single spot, so that you could have that what's happening. Are there events going on? But yeah, I mean, and even if you had patch notes from MindArc, things would change that weren't in them, so it wasn't complete. It's basically developers that are talking at the water cooler about what they changed to their analyst or their community manager, and the community manager tries to remember it from memory and puts it on a WordPress, and that's what you get. And naturally, since it doesn't come from your patch notes, don't come from like the end of sprints, the sprint cards or any of that, it's not complete. And or your sprint cards aren't complete themselves either, and so you get what you get.
You a fan of Jira? The whole agile
So
model?
I am a certified Scrum champion. That is what I had done for the last several years. Was that what I did for 5 years before I retired was
You cut out after was, by the way. I think what you had done for the past. Okay.
I was a enterprise DevOps manager, senior manager for a Fortune 100 company. I was responsible for all the DevOps tools that the company had, and getting the 2,000 developers onboarded and to use them and to evangelize them and into it and all. And that's without any mandates. Big political climates, people wanted to do their own thing. One of the big products that we had was Jira. So but I prefer GitHub better. Jira has its place, but I prefer tightly coupled development, and tying Jira to GitHub is not supported anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you're using their cloud version, and their cloud version, we couldn't do that because the ISAs, our security folks, wouldn't sign off on basically letting Atlassian in the company delegate security terms.
Right.
Who does, right? And so of it, so you couldn't tie the two together because they stopped supporting the module that allowed them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hadn't realized that myself. I never knew that Jira had a GitHub module or anything like that, so I'm not a developer by trade, so.
They had one. It was poor. It wasn't a very good one. But they did have one at one time. Now I think next year, I think they're getting rid of all their server products anyway, so you have to use the cloud version of, I think, Data Center. I think it was. But I think even Data Center didn't have that integration, but it still presented security issues. And furthermore, GitHub has GitHub boards, so we found that between that and Azure DevOps services that we had also, most teams that were doing waterfall plus sprints, because sprints are just drips in a waterfall, big picture. People who had really big portfolios like that, they preferred using Azure DevOps services that they could just connect to, and they just didn't use Jira. The majority of users that we had with Jira, and there were a lot of them, were business analysts and business owners who were using Jira, not development teams.
Gotcha.
What I enjoyed Jira the most, a little outside the scope of all this conversation, but I liked their service desk. And why that's relevant is because MindArt could use Jira Service Desk or Zendesk or any of those that are protected. They could do that. They could have those integrations if they wanted, and it would serve them much better than what they have.
You know, I agree, and I think it's, like you said, pretty small effort and stuff. Just them getting off their asses to do it. So, but no, I use Jira. I use another ticketing system at my job as well. I've used Remedy. There was something from IBM that I used for a short while when I was a SOC analyst in a previous life. There's been a lot of ticket systems that I've used, and by far the best one, or my favorite, has been Jira so far. Hey Amryu, what's up, man? But yeah, sorry to kind of spin off into the real life topic, but when you had remarked about the sprint, I knew that we had been in the same world for a little bit, so that's cool. So how long have you been retired?
Year and a half.
Nice, man.
I am trying to get back in the workforce, but just because retirement is great, but it is boring. And turns out I need a lot of stuff to do to keep my mind occupied, and if I don't, I really crumble. And I think most do. I think people who retire, you know, it isn't too long before they end up just dying, for that matter.
Yeah.
I retired for specific reasons, and you know, the luxury is that I don't necessarily need the job. It's what they call post-retirement jobs, that you can be picky. But the economy is pretty poor, and furthermore, I can only remote work because where I live.
Yeah.
And so with the sentiment with leaderships that are, we'll say not intelligent, let's keep it that way. The truth is that they're trying to prop up or continue to prop up their commercial real estate and their tax benefits, which have they have occupancy requirements to maintain those tax requirements or benefits. And so this return to office, now that the COVID stuff has gone, they now require these occupancies, at least as it was with the company that I left. But they blamed it on, hey, we want culture and all of that, it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm just not putting up with it. Plus, like I said, I live in a place where I can only remote work, so it's just how it is.
Yeah, so I think after I get used to the remote work, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to a brick and mortar if I can prevent it. I mean, the work that I do doesn't require me to be in an office, in my opinion, you know, so I guess it depends on the role, you know, but I think even my wife's job, like, she's a real estate developer, so I don't think even her job requires her to be there. It's just the culture that she's in. They're not used to collaborating strictly over a virtual environment. So I think the time's gonna have to catch up. So
I've been on both sides of this issue, and I know that, you know, why I was against it was because I was not I wasn't capable of managing, or at least I thought I wasn't capable of managing workers. In reality, I really was. And there's also a lot of distrust with management who just are managers because of the incompetency um, cliche. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
You're promoted to the level that you're most incompetent at.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I butchered that, but that's about what it is. And so there's a lot of managers who shouldn't be managers. They probably ought to not even be, work. They should probably be flipping burgers. And they're the ones that are responsible for managing those remote workers. And I have stories. Uh, you know, I have big problems with the outsourcing from India, um, because they come in with these companies that basically have them as indentured servants. You pay these companies, like the one I worked at, paid companies 80 something plus an hour, but the developer got 30 or less, if that.
Jesus.
Because they paid for the visa, they're paying a little bit of a stipend to get there. Nothing else. They're not paying rent, food, none of that, car, none of that. Just they pay for the visa and they basically feel like they own you. And if you quit that company, you have to pay that back.
Oh Jesus,
So
man.
people don't quit until they have that money banked to be able to leave. That's indentured servitude.
Yeah, you're just buying your way out of to freedom at that point. That's fucked, man.
So you have these people that are, one of the story I will tell is that we had a extremely incompetent and arrogant manager who I personally ended up getting fired because she turned her guns on me, and she shouldn't have. The manager, her way of managing her remote workers and her on-site workers. So her remote workers are the ones that are actually in India. They're off-site. I mean, they can't be on-site. And then you have your ones that were on-site. The way that she managed them was whether or not they could keep the light green on Microsoft Teams.
Oh my god.
It was eventually WebEx.
Yeah.
If that light did not stay green, she was wearing your ass out in chat. I mean, I think we all can say that that's just entirely inappropriate and micromanaging, and that's not even the worst of it.
Yeah, that's
My point in that is that there are a lot of managers with that mindset or similar, and they're the ones that are saying that they need you to come into the office because they have eyes on you and they know that you're working, versus the agile side of things where you have a certain set of book of work.
Yep.
And I know that everything can't fit into that nice little box, but when it can, when you're in IT, when you're in customer service, or you have some kind of KPMs, right? It doesn't matter that you're there at that particular time working, because some people need to take breaks, they need to pee, their dogs are having a fight, their cat's on fire, something, and they need to go deal with that. The same thing is true if you're on site and you're doing water cooling or you're BSing in the break room, right? It's half dozen, six the other. And you can, as long as that book of work gets done within that particular time frame, it doesn't matter. It's a win, right? Those are the expectations that are set. That's the agile way. And that's why you're supposed to have, the working charter and all of those things. And that way, as a Scrum Master or Scrum Champion, or forget that, and then a manager, you then have to only manage when someone is sick, or is not performing the way they should, or is below expectations.
Yeah, they're exploiting, like, like you said, sick leave or something obvious, or anything like that. But dude, the fucking level of watching your dot go off of green, man. Oh, I would straight up leave a place, man. Like, I had a taste of that when my previous employer got acquired by a bigger entity, and they had a very 80s style way of like managing stuff. Very dated when it came to like, you know, button seat kind of thing. And it didn't take me long to figure out that I wasn't gonna fit, you know, there. So I kind of intentionally didn't put my best foot forward, so they had to displace me, which basically meant that they laid me off, and I just saw myself out. It was the most amicable way for it to end. So sometimes you have to know, man, what you're worth, and it's kind of abhorrent, some of these manager styles that kind of get brought out there. I'm dealing with that right now in my current company. There's a certain individual in middle management that's just the bane of my existence right now. So I'm kind of the mind that they were promoted to the, I guess, their level of incompetency, like you said before. But it's a shame, man.
Sometimes it's just political. I mean, I've got plenty of stories like that. And then what ends up happening if that level of culture infects the company, as it did with where I was at, then all the good people leave, and you're left with those people, and it just is a perpetual cycle.
Yep. It's hard to get out of it. It just keeps spiraling, right?
Yep.
What rank are you on meta, by the way?
I mean, that's probably the one thing I've never bothered looking at, because I don't see any use in attributes. It's basically how big my penis is. So to answer your question, it's 306 inches.
All right. Some Borum status right there, man. Jesus.
Yeah, and we all know we miss Count Dickie.
Dude, the bow. Oh my god.
And see, and I'll do a callback there. It's those things. It's those little things. It's the, you know, it shows that the company isn't just doing entirely copy and paste. At least at the time, that instance was unique, right?
Yeah.
But it was a little something, right? And not, hey, here's another Easter Mayhem with the same mobs and the same blocks, and you know, it was a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
And then they took them away.
Yeah. It's because of the well, we've already talked about it. The new new demographic, I guess, or the new yeah, the new.
I mean, I don't know. I think, as far as I know, you still have to be 18 to play this game, and even if you still have Boorums that, I mean, if you Mathoids, if you wanted to farm T4 components, you're getting slapped with dick all day long. Pfeffoid Pit, I don't think there's any real justification for removing Count Dickie, at least not as a boss.
Yeah.
Because you have that in other ways. I mean, if you wanted to see some tits, you could go see the Brewworm mobs on Calypso. So, I mean, heck, you still have fishnets in the game.
Oh yeah, the fishnet stockings and stuff, like the bodysuit. Yeah. And then they had the audacity to lock the Mankini to Next Island, after making it available everywhere. Dude, I still want to say that I am the sole reason that it got put back in place, because of my support case that I made. I'm so proud of that case, man. Holy shit.
I don't know why they locked it, but
people got mad about people wearing mankinis and dancing up near them, is basically what it boiled down to.
I mean, logically speaking, it was going to stop eventually. Just let it die out.
Yeah, let people have their fun. They'll get it out of their systems, you know. So, could you elaborate on why you don't see much value in attributes, by the way?
With the exception of the first batch of like strength, doesn't really give you anything stat wise. Um, so the first bit of strength gives you the ability carry weight, so I'll give you that, but it's diminishing returns. The first bit of stamina, I mean, it gives you some hit points, but other skills gives you that much faster, um, far more exponentially so. But when you look at what these attributes actually do in comparison to your professions, they literally do nothing. For example, let's say what is it? Well, hang on a second. Let me open up Unlocker. So let's take Swordsman, because it's what pulled up. Strength itself gives you 140% of whatever your attribute number is towards your profession. So that's 140. Like for me, my strength is 102. So I get, what, 1.4? So I get 1.4 levels for having 102 strength.
Yeah.
Increasing that doesn't increase that much more. And most attribute weights are much, much less than that.
True.
So another example is electrokinetic. 40% of that level, or 40% of intelligence and 100% of psyche goes towards my profession. So 40% of 132, which is my intelligence. So I get, was it 0.6 levels? And I get 0.9 levels because of psyche. In an age in which you get a massive amount of skills, it just it doesn't do anything unless the skills have inherently different benefits, or conspiracies, not the right, just theories of intelligence gives you better loot crafting, or I don't know, something like
Yeah.
that. Unless it does something similar in that realm, it's just a number.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the big reason why I push it is for the HP gains, for stamina and strength, but otherwise, yeah, I tend to agree.
I mean, that's what you pick, right?
Right.
Stamina, strength if you need it, but if you're at diminishing returns, you choose intelligence.
Yeah, for looter.
But even if you had looter, I mean, it's not even a drop in a bucket, but you just do it just to do it.
Right. Yeah, and plus you can't even chip out attributes, right? So, I mean, in theory, you could sell skills, but you can't sell attributes. I know I've always heard that one as well. So, at least yet. We're not to that point yet.
Yeah. I mean, the attributes was just a nice icing on the attribute, the meta cake, I guess. It was just something to do since they got rid of the repeatables. But I mean, even those who did the repeatables, people did repeatable with the exception of JPK. I mean, he's a masochist. But most people, when they did repeatables, they did repeatable stamina, and it was for a particular reason, right? But I don't know why you do it for any other reason. And if I'm not mistaken, the repeatable stamina was in a place that had 5% tax. I thought it was on Sacred Island. or whatever, Secret Island. I could be wrong, but I thought that was where that was at. But that was during 1.0 as well, so some people could get away with it. It wasn't uncommon for people to get 109, 111 in 1.0.
That's crazy, man.
And yeah, but people had to pay for that, and that's why I said the current era is better overall for players, because people, the new players and all, had to pay for that. I would like to have had a little bit of taste of that 109, 111, but
What,
it's
longer
what it
than a
is.
week?
No, I never had it then. I think the best that I did was 104. I think that's the best I did.
That's crazy still, though. Compared to now.
Oh yeah, I'd love. I cycle 1 million or plus a month. I would love to have 104.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
But
been
that's
able.
also when you have a month that is 96, 96 and a half.
Yeah.
You're kind of left with, I can't do this. You can't cycle 1 million, 1.2, and then have returns that are 96, 96. Unless it goes back to my bankroll that, with the volatility, your bankroll needs to keep up.
Right. Yeah. Because even at that level, like 4% is huge, right? It's a huge deficit. So, if you're saying like 96% return, you're losing 4% of like a million ped. That's quite a bit. So.
Yeah, I think I said I lost close to 20,000 ped in this last mayhem, and the only reason why I lost 20 and not more is because I had a lot of box markup that I had banked up, and I sold it to save myself.
Yeah.
I had the exact same thing happen in Merry Mayhem where I lost that exact same amount. I personally can't do a migration and Halloween Mayhem and for it to come to the same thing. With Merry Mayhem, my looter is well over 100 or maxed or whatever we're calling it. I don't know if there is a max, but we'll take Zoe's grid at heart and say that there is, in which case I don't really feel like that that I should have gotten the results that I did, and even if I did, I should have gotten that kickback not too long after. In theory, with my robot looter, I had that same loss, but my robot looter was 83. So, my thing is that if that's what I'm getting with plus 80 efficiency, what are all the newer players? What are all the people who are trying to grind up that have 30 and 40 looter getting? It's not good.
Yeah. It's a bit of a capital, like it's a bit of a capital investment when you're coming in with no skills, and I remember on the last Q&A that I did, it was like, why don't we have looters scale differently where the lower levels come in, you gain more looter skills in the beginning and then it tapers off towards the end, right? That could maybe help balance it out, so that way you get past that noob area where you're basically burning the candle at both ends. But it's a rough place to be for a new player right now.
Well, I think the codex helps that. The issue is that new players are stuck with trying to level whatever weapon they have to get where they need and balancing it with taking perception and dexterity and alertness, right? And these new players, they're not going to necessarily know that they need to probably focus more on taking the looter because it means more than taking the rifle because they want to move up to the next level. They need to
Yeah.
be patient with the rifle, maybe go a little bit harder, shoot longer, I don't know, use the skill pills, maybe, and focus on taking looter whenever they can get. They just don't know that.
Yeah, it's. I wish there was a clear guide. Maybe I would do one. Maybe I'll do one later for like. Even that, like, getting it to new players sucks because there's so much like. There's such a gap between new players. Like, they wouldn't even go on PCF, and like, what are the odds of them actually coming across my blog or like my PCF post, even if I wrote one? You know, like, reaching them so hard. You know, and like you said, they are very much like, when you come to the game, you don't know that I need to wait and rifle skills come easy, you know, but that analysis is going to be so hard to get. It's just hard, man.
Well, I'll say this, that when I did the bankroll management thread, I did it just because that was a big thing of mine. I was a former card counter, and bankroll is a thing for me. Um, and risk of ruin is a concept that is incredibly important. Um, and it's a little difficult now to calculate that here in this game, but um, the I created that thread just as a general reminder and a reference point because people were constantly complaining that they had, bad returns, much like I do in my own hunting logs. But they have bad returns. They say they have, 50% returns, which is not true. They have probably 50% ROI, negative ROI. Those are two different concepts. And they needed a general understanding that those particular mathematical principles that exist outside of here when you're investing and buying stocks and gambling in a casino also are true here and one and maybe in a different form with different parameters. And so when I created it, it I guess resonated with a lot more people than I thought it would, and then eventually got sticky. And then when new players did come along, those people who had read it then told those new players to come read it, and I knew that at least made an impact in that way because when I came back after quitting, I had a lot of people say that thread was pretty meaningful to them. So what I will say to you is that guides themselves within this game aren't going to be created because MindArt created them and aren't going to do it. They don't care.
Yeah.
Both because of resources, but also because in creating said guide, they basically open up their black box they can hide behind, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So if you think that a guide needs to be created, a comprehensive one, then create one, have the players request it to be stickied if it is good enough, and let everything else, let all the dominoes fall into place after that.
Yeah. So do you have any like advice you would give to a new player if one was listening right now? On that note.
Yeah, and it's a bit self-deprecating. So what I will say is that my biggest losses within this game have been incurred by either. Well, we'll start with number two. There are two main reasons. The second one has been my own stupidity, um, usually by lack of patience. Um, Mainly genetics. I'm fairly impulsive, if you couldn't tell by my hunting logs. But it's also just that's just what it is, and um, the the lack of patience has caused me to miss out on some opportunities. So, with that being said, have a game plan, have some goals, short term and long term goals. And this is really for anybody, this is really not a new player. know what you're going to do with your character. Know the things that, if you want to upgrade your plates, know what plates you actually want to get, know, how that fits with your armor and what doors open as a result of that. And if you don't know, you need to ask someone that you trust to help you with that. Which then leads to number one. My biggest losses have been incurred by bad actors. Those bad actors have been exploiters, particularly really bad resellers. Not going to name names. And yes, I didn't have to sell to those people, those resellers. However, I say that not as anything that I've done recently, because that's not the case. I'm saying that when I was a new player, I was preyed upon by resellers, right? And part of that is my lack of understanding at item valuation within this game and understanding the nuances that people do with how they value their items and hype them up and then downplay yours, and basically like walking into a really bad car dealership, just basically all of them, that will sting you and sting you hard, because at the end of the day, they really just want to sell your item and not anything else. My biggest losses have occurred when I was first starting and was buying items from particular few individuals, and that equated to my biggest losses. On top of that, there were quite a few bad actors that were running up the prices of our coins when I was trying to do my land areas, and that was my own mistakes. So just being aware of your surroundings and know that the game overall is a PvP game.
Yeah.
So you can't always get what you want at that particular time. And sometimes because of price variations and because you can make, if you have money, you can make a really big impact. Point in case like these Unreal tokens, you can make that price jump from 13 to 20 really fast. To be patient. Because there's such a small pool of people within this game that one person that wants to wave it around a bit, can make quite the wave. Have a game plan, and before you buy something, before you potentially buy something and get stuck with it, and especially as a new player, and if you really want to get to end game really fast, don't buy any unlimited weapons, because you have to eventually sell those, and you're probably going to take a loss on them, especially in this market. Be measured with that. I mean, you can buy them. There's cheaper alternatives, but don't buy anything. Don't buy a big, a good example is like a BC30 augmented, or go after these big, new, shiny twin weapons, or $3,000-$4,000 that you're probably only going to use for maybe a month at most if you're going to run it hard. If you're trying to get to end game,
Right.
don't do that.
I mean, that's pretty solid advice, especially sticking with limited weaponry until you get up in level. I feel like if you're trying to buy a unlimited level 30 weapon, you're gonna find yourself in level 50, 70 pretty soon, and then you've got to shuffle it back around to get any sort of meaningful gains or bigger ped cycles. So, really good stuff, man.
There's a lot of people who are sitting on an enormous amount of limited blueprints for weapons that can make you a batch amount of weapons just because that's what they do, for a lot less markup than they put on auction. So if for a short amount of time you need, LP30 limited weapons, our matrix they break pretty quick, but if you need 50 of them, someone will make them for you, and will make them cheaper for you than what they would put on auction, just to do a long bulk, run of them. take the time to do that. Or better yet, there are limited weapons that drop from other mobs, like the LC 150 tacticals and the ASG2s and some other stuff that are thrown on auction for 102, 105, 105, and 108. Buy those. Run those. I know a particular hunter back in 1.0 that did that for the longest time. Just didn't buy anything unlimited, just ran on limited weapons. So, especially when you can throw an extender on top of it, you can make them last longer.
Yeah.
Goes back to what's the end. I personally wouldn't buy any unlimited weapon unless I was at endgame, and that was your last weapon. I wouldn't be buying anything up until then, unless you don't have a problem with owning whatever it is. So, like an LR60 augmented or something like that. But
Yeah.
It's going to be really difficult to buy something like that and then turn around and sell it later with the market and the way the way the world is. Maybe asking for trouble.
Right. Oh yeah, no, it's really solid advice, especially that that part that you mentioned about staying patient. I can't tell you how many times that I've been impatient and took a loss, and then, like, for example, when I sold my Zora's HK, they were all down at the time, and if I had just waited a few more months, I could have gotten almost what I paid for it. So someone was asking you to name the names, but I'm not gonna ask you to do it. But I feel like it is good for the community, though, to, in a certain extent, call out bullshit when you see it, though.
Yeah, I'm not gonna name names. I think people who have been in the community long enough,
Yeah.
but or have their suspicions and things. But I'm yeah, I'm I'm just not gonna do that.
No, you're good. Someone said they had an Imp 2870 for 2 years, and Yuzuki said it's still one of his favorite weapons as well. So that's a good weapon, from what I've heard. So
Yeah, but a weapon like that has some tangible resale value because if I'm not mistaken, it has a really long repair time, right? It's those nuances. People who macro or whatever don't want to repair often, we'll just say that, are going to lean on those weapons that have long repair times. I want to point out that the weapons that are dropping here have really long repair times. So I want you to take that for what it's worth. MindArc is doing everything that they can to encourage the behavior that people are complaining about, or at least on PCF. It's good for their bottom line.
yeah,
But there are a lot of weapons that people will buy that don't have very good resale value, and it's like trying to buy. It would be like buying a house in San Francisco. I mean, you're asking for trouble. Or any metropolis, you're going to take a 40% hit in the next 6 months. You just not look at where the game is going, and people are going to be more apt to spend money on end game weapons than they are the lore ones, with some exception. But are people really going to spend 20k on an Apollo?
No. I would hope not. But yeah, I mean, if they, like, going back to your point about the longer repair time weapons and stuff, I mean, the longer people cycle, the more money that MindArc is gonna make just off of the cycle, right? So I mean, they don't care. I don't think they care if you're at your computer or not, to be honest. But that's on us to suffer from or capitalize on, depending on how you do it. So
Well, they need to care that you're at your PC.
they should.
What
But I mean,
what happens at your PC is completely different, in my view,
no.
as well as the ethics that the gamemanship that happens in between. There would be a lot less complaining if people actually just gave a shit and treated people better than they do. But I'll give a good example. There was a good, you go to a Brute Cave, and this was right about the time I bought the BC 120. I bought the BC 120 because people were basically taking giant shits on me, and I wanted the DPS. Still largely the case now in terms of, I want the DPS. Plus, I've tasted 300 DPS. I want that again. That's just how it is. I'm sitting in a brood cave. I'm killing dotties, and someone rolls in, sits right in front of me, and just starts meleeing stuff. They're including my own mobs, just not paying attention. And I don't know if his macro took him to that spot.
Yeah.
Which is also has happened. I've seen, with different players. But also just being a giant douche and just like, this is my spot now. What am I going to do? What can I do if he has more DPS than me? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because if Mindark was smart about it, what they would do is that if you took the first hit, then any other hit from anybody else would be locked, right? That they couldn't actually damage it. That it's yours because you hit it first and then expires at a certain time. And they should actually implement something like that. But they don't. And so that opens the door from people like what happened this week today, where I'm shooting the mob and I'm just out DPS'd, and not once, not twice, but 3 times, and that person purposely backed into me to shoot them up. That's the stuff that bothers people. Those are the reasons why some people go to instances and away from people, is because they just don't want to deal with that. They come to play this game to relax, not to deal with this mess. And what that means is that the places that have opportunities are confined to a few people as a first instead of everybody else. And it's just because if you have the most DPS, you get to piss all over everybody. And it just shouldn't be that way.
Right. So I'm assuming that you are overall not in favor of macroing. What's up?
Oh, I just said 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
I don't care if you're at your PC. I don't care what you do. I don't care as long as you're not pissing all over people.
Yeah.
I don't care as long as you're not in shared mobs and you're just saying, this is my shared mob, piss off. Because shared is shared. I am more concerned about the gamemanship than I am about everything else. What I do have a problem with is that people are in open areas and aren't even at their PCs at all. And they're the ones that have the biggest DPS, and so they encroach on people. And what recourse do you have? You don't have any.
Recourse?
That's the problem. Yeah, recourse. And that's the problem I have. Because if you ask an official to come by, they're not going to come there. That means you have to record them, and if you record them, then what?
Yeah. I mean, so on that note, there's been a recent thing going around where certain players will try to lure other players who are AFK macroing into a spaceship to take them up to space to loot them. Would you say that this
Correct.
is some form of the players taking it upon themselves to do what needs to be done? Or do you think that they should be condemned to be labeled as space pirates like everyone else that does lootable space PvP?
The three people that I know that are doing that from one particular site, which is full of folks that exploit, should be banned. And the money that is stolen should be given to the people that was stolen from. It is not any different than the what pirates used to do by summoning people into their mother and looting them that way. It's just the same trick. We can have a conversation as to why they're able to pull it off. And I've reported this already to Ludwig, and he said he'd pass it on. My issue is that it's an exploit of people putting you on their guest list without consent. And in doing so, allows you to send them up into space to loot. That's exploiting. That's an exploit. And it's also it is only consensual to go into space on the very thinnest of terms. It is poor gamemanship on one side of things, but because there's real money involved, what they should be doing is what everybody else has been tasked to do. If you have a problem with people that are AFK or whatever and they're causing a nuisance to other people, which is not the case, you're just looking for targets, soft targets. That's all they're doing. Then you should be doing like what everybody else is asked to do: record them and report them, and get banned, or have the official come in and actually verify that they're actually not at their PC, because you have no idea on the surface. But this recent thing of these three individuals from one sock is in my opinion, pretty much the worst of what Entropia has to offer. That stuff should not be happening at all. And furthermore, I think MindArt needs to be dealing with the exploit in itself. So ultimately, what's going to end up happening is that everybody is going to be on incognito and invisible soon.
Yeah. But like once
And
you're
that's
added,
not the game.
once you're added, the damage is already done. Like you can't like unadd yourself from the guest list, even by going incognito. So,
Yes, you can't remove yourself.
but yeah.
I mean, like I said, we can have the conversation as to why they're allowed to take people up into space. And that is a conversation to have. But that is also a conversation that MindArk is further encouraging. So that's a separate issue. The issue is around a really bad exploit that they're exploiting, not to keep hitting that word, of the platform itself. There's no place for that in this game. The game is already difficult and challenging enough. And I'll say one other thing. These same individuals plus others have bullied other players within the game without any recourse from MindArk. So a good example is Ronnie. I feel fucking bad for him and others. There is no place in that. You don't have to like people who are macroing or AFKing or whomever. Those are two separate types of class of people that are players, macroing and AFKers. And it's one thing to mess with them, but for one, putting a quad on top of them and putting them into space is harassing and griefing. So that's an issue in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Doing that without taking them into space and trying to lure them and mess with them and getting them to close their pet and fucking with them. And even if they're at their PC, you still do it anyway. That's still griefing.
Yeah.
It's no different. Just like griefing is if a pirate shoots you down 2 or 3 times in space without there being consensual battling. That's a bannable offense as well. You can't. Pirates can't do that. They can get you once. They do you 3 or 4 times, they're gonna get sanctioned for that.
Yeah.
But it's even to another level when you're telling people to go kill themselves or to to fuck with them or to just run them through the mud. There's just life's shit enough.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with the way someone is playing, record them and report them. And if you're not getting what you need them to do, then make hay in support cases or PCF or whatever means that you need to do that. But be somewhat civil. Be somewhat human. And I just, there are times in the way some people talk to folks that I worry whether or not that person's just going to go off themselves. I'm not talking about Ronnie necessarily, but the conversations that I've seen, and it just, I just don't care for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got a point there, but it's deplorable behavior for sure. But no, I know you don't want to name names. I'm not going to name them out loud because this VOD will be published later. Twitch chat isn't displayed either, but people are talking about it in chat. If anyone wants to know, you can get amongst yourselves and chat it out here, but I'm not going to read it out loud. Just for $5 sake. I don't think he wants names being named right now, but we all know who it is. If you're in the know, you're in the know. If you're not in the know, message someone who is, and they'll let you know. That's how that works. But no, I agree with your stance. I mean, on the topic, I feel like the situation with Ronnie was borderline at best, but this, like, dragging people into space is next level.
And here's what I want to know. I want to know what the guild master of that SOC is actually going to do to those players. Are those the type of players that you want in your SOC? Because if so, that entire SOC needs to be blacklisted by the community. That's my take.
Yeah, but no one's gonna do that.
I realize that.
But I mean, that's the problem. Is that particular SOC is so good at playing the PR game. Like, I mean, this has been going on for years, man. Like, and then you get new people that don't remember, that don't know. It's always the same. It's always the same.
There's always a tipping point somewhere. The question is, where is it? And I've had this person tell me that he doesn't condone that behavior, particularly kill stealing. So this is me calling that person out and saying, what are you going to do about these individuals? Are you going to keep them in your seat?
Yep.
For those that are playing and want to have something lightweight to record, there is a add-on, I think, with Overwolf called Outplayed. Maybe it's Overwolf, I don't know. Something called Outplayed that you can use for a quick record. Maybe worth using or getting at some point for particular cases like this. Or you have someone that's kill stealing you, or I don't know, something out of the ordinary that you need to record and report. It's probably a good time to start doing that.
I think NVIDIA also has an instant replay feature as well. If you have an NVIDIA GeForce experience installed, you should be able
that
to.
may be where outplayed comes from, but
Okay.
I know my device has it, my PC. I just kind of attributed it to Overwolf, but it may not be. Nope, it is in fact Overwolf. Just looked.
Okay. That's a really good tip.
As Kitty will tell you, I give good tips.
Hmm. Sorry for the lull, man. I've kind of gotten distracted with some hot drama coming up in chat right now. But anyone else in chat who has questions on topic for $5, do hit me up. I think we might be fizzling out here soon. We're coming up on the 4-hour mark, I think. So last chance to get them in.
Hot drama, huh?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's you ever seen that Spider-Man meme where they're both like pointing at each other? That's what's happening right now with a couple of people in chat, and it's pretty hilarious. But it is what it is.
It's funny you say that because when I reported this issue, that's pretty much what I got. One side said it was a Cyrene issue, and Cyrene said it was a Mindark issue, and it's actually a platform issue. But that's the kind of frustration that I get, because it feels like when I talk to someone and report something, it's to people who've never even played their platform.
Yeah. Lokomoto ask any DJ and altcoin tips from $5?
Say that again?
Do you have any altcoin tips for him?
No, I don't have any. I have become more of a Bitcoin maximalist here lately, and considering what's going on in the world, I think that's probably where I'd stay.
Remember the nice things you have had to eat. You must say thank you for all these good
Although, with that being said, the U.S. government owns billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin, so take that level of risk with you.
Yeah.
It's going down, you heard me?
Well, alright, man. I don't think I'm gonna force this to happen anymore. If no one in chat has anything else, we can start to wind it down here a little bit. But thank you again, Mr. Dollar, for the Q&A and the I think Princess Issa has a beat question to end it on. When can she expect the next $5 rhyme to drop in local chat?
Probably pretty soon, since I do that anytime that my loot is really bad, so that's probably a couple of days from now. But I've tried to use my hunting log as a means to vent my frustration as colorful content. And now that I've also am pretty addicted to Midjourney, some of the events that happen within this game you'll start seeing more pictures, and they'll convey some thought of what's happened in the game. It's actually quite interesting to take a cropped photo of like a Hoff and mix it with something, and it produces uh, eerily similar content to some of the photos that we've gotten from Unreal 5. Just saying.
Okay.
It's not the same, right? But I'm just saying that, I mean, if Mindark really wanted to fuck with us, they could just go to Midjourney and just spit out a bunch of stuff to keep us occupied, because it'd be very similar. I've got a couple things where I took I blended my avatar photo that I posted, and the Hoff that I got yesterday, mixed them two together, and if that would be in the game, it blew my mind. The whole Midjourney thing itself blows my mind. People doing art, drawing it out and whatnot is going to be a thing of the past, I think, to some level.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you have some schmuck like me who is computer logic brained and not art brained, who can spit out really nice artwork now, I mean, there's sites dedicated entirely. People are using AI completely for porn, but
Yeah.
you know, it's an interesting time to be alive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, man. AI is crazy with what's coming out and everything. So, thanks everyone for the gifted subs. Upstairs, Will, thank you for the 5 gifted, and Princess Isa also, thank you for the 5 gifted. It means a lot to see the support for the channel like this. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, man. So, any other note that you want to leave it on before we adjourn the evening?
Yeah, I posted in general the photo.
Let me see this. Oh, wow. Huh. How about that? If you guys aren't already in the Discord, feel free to check it out below. The link is below for the Discord image itself. You guys can see the links that go up for the videos. By the way, you're okay with this all being recorded and published afterwards, $5?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good, man. I appreciate it.
I mean, just know that there's enough in the content that it will stir some pretty heated conversations. But
dude, I don't give a fuck. Like, I mean,
I know you don't know that, and it's probably really good for you. You just need to know that you know, there's going to be some there.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it, man. It's what keeps it interesting. But no, I genuinely do not give a fuck, so it's all good. I just, as long as there's nothing in there that you want me to redact, just DM me. If there was something that hits your brain, like, oh, I'd rather that not be in there, then, you know, I'll make sure that gets out. But yeah.
No, I'm good.
Cool, man. Well, all right. I'll get out of Discord and let you have the good rest of your evening. And thanks again, man. It was thanks again, man. It was a pleasure having you. Had to end it on a voice track there. So, but yeah, it was awesome, man.
Yeah, you don't get to cut that out though.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping the voice crack in. So, but yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'll catch you next time.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.